Chapter 75. Zhang Yifeng was surprised to see Nie Tian. He did not expect that Nie Tian would also participate in the recruitment of Tyrant Cloud Academy. When he saw Nie Tian earlier, he thought that the latter was just there to watch the fun. Nie Tian did not beat around the bush and said directly, "I don't want others to see my original spirit." Nie Tian's original spirit was the chaotic original coffin. He did not want others to see it. He had been worried about this just now, but now that it was Zhang Yifeng's test, there was no problem. "Of course," Zhang Yifeng said quickly. The other alchemist, Zhang Yu, and a few other warriors knew the relationship between Nie Tian and Zhang Yifeng, so they did not dare to object and nodded. "Then can I go now?" Nie Tian smiled faintly. "Yes, of course." Zhang Yifeng quickly walked out to see Nie Tian out. Nie Tian suddenly thought of something and said to Zhang Yifeng, "There is a girl called Qiu Ling later. I don't want her score to be too low." "I understand." Zhang Yifeng nodded. "All right, you can go back now," Nie Tian said and turned to walk out of the testing room. Zhang Yifeng returned to his seat, looking very happy. He could not ask for more than a chance to do things for Nie Tian. "Master Zhang, how many points will Mr. Nie's original spirit be given?" Another alchemist, Zhang Yu, asked carefully. "Whatever." Zhang Yifeng chuckled. 10 points then." Zhang Yu's face darkened. 10 points was the highest score. Zhang Yifeng wanted to perform well, but he was actually harming Nie Tian by doing so. The higher Nie Tian's score was, the more attention he would get, and the more hatred Lan Binji would have for him. Lan Binji was a prince. Since he was participating in Tyrant Cloud Academy's recruitment, how could he allow others to steal his limelight? Walking out of the testing room, Nie Tian felt relaxed. Now they only needed to wait for Qiu Ling's original spirit test to end, and then they could return to Jin Mansion. Tyrant Cloud Academy only tested strength and original spirit. The results would be posted tomorrow. Those who ranked in the top 180 could enter Tyrant Cloud Academy and participate in the freshman martial meet. Soon, Qiu Ling's elemental spirit test ended, and she walked out with a smile on her face. Nie Tian smiled faintly. It seemed that Zhang Yifeng was reliable. Without further ado, everyone left immediately. As soon as he returned to the Jin residence, a servant hurriedly ran over. "Young master, you're finally back. Master is looking for you." The servant saw Jean de Bao and hurriedly said as he wiped the beads of sweat off his forehead. "Got it." Jean de Bao agreed and couldn't help but laugh bitterly. "Looks like father already knows about the bet." The bet between Jean de Bao and Qin Yuhu had long since spread throughout Blue Cloud City. For Jin Mingxin to be in such a hurry to find Jean de Bao, he must have heard about the bet. "I'll go with you," Nie Tian nodded. Nie Tian was determined to win the Rookie King. Seeing the legendary beautiful Dean was the only thing he was interested in. However, Nie Tian wanted to hear Jin Mingxin's opinion and inquire about the situation of the Bloodbat sect. Qiu Shan brought Qiu Ling and Nie Yuro back first, while Nie Tian and Jean de Bao went to the conference hall together. The two quickly arrived at the hall. Off in the distance, Nie Tian saw Jin Mingxin sitting in an old-fashioned wooden armchair in the hall. Sitting across from him was a young man who appeared to be about 18 or 19 years old. Seeing Jean de Bao and Nie Tian appear, the youth stood up and laughed loudly. "You two must be Mr. Nie Tian and young master Jean de Bao. Who are you?" Jean de Bao had never seen this youth before and was slightly surprised. Nie Tian observed the other party. This was an extremely handsome youth with a kind smile on his face. He looked approachable, but there was a cold aura about him that made him look a little awkward. What surprised Nie Tian even more was that this youth's appearance was somewhat familiar. He actually looked somewhat similar to Lan Binji. Jin Mingxin hurriedly stood up and scolded Jean de Bao. "De Bao, don't be rude. This is our Blue Cloud Empire's Crown Prince. Quickly greet him." "Crown Prince." Jean de Bao was shocked and hurriedly bowed. "Jean de Bao greets Crown Prince." "Crown Prince?" Nie Tian was slightly surprised. No wonder this person looked similar to Lan Bingji. They were brothers. The youth in front of him was none other than the Blue Cloud Empire's crown prince, Lan Bingchen. He was also Lan Bingji's elder brother. Could it be that he is here because of the bet? He advised me not to compete with Lan Bingji for the Rookie King. Nie Tian was trying to guess Lan Bingchen's intentions. Ahem. Jin Mingxin saw that Nie Tian did not react and could only give him 2 dry coughs to remind him. Although Nie Tian's identity was special, it was better not to be too rude in front of the crown prince. No matter what, Lan Bingchen was the nominal successor of the Blue Cloud Empire and the future Royal Azure Emperor. Nie Tian only nodded his head slightly and did not say anything. Although the other party was the crown prince, Nie Tian did not take it to heart. Lan Bingchen did not mind. Instead, he bowed respectfully to Nie Tian and said, "Mr. Nie is young and talented. I heard that Grandmaster Zhang Yifeng is Mr. Nie's disciple. May I know if this is true?" "Zhang Yifeng is only my disciple in name. I have not officially accepted him as a disciple," Nie Tian said indifferently. Nie Tian did not have a good impression of Lan Bingchen. He always felt that the other party looked amiable on the surface but was very gloomy on the inside. Disciple in name? Lan Bingchen could not conceal the shock in his heart. He swallowed his saliva and froze on the spot. Lan Bingchen naturally knew what it meant to be a disciple in name. He never thought that the arrogant Zhang Yifeng would be willing to be a disciple in name of a youth. Nie Tian said indifferently, "Your Highness the Crown Prince, are you all right?" "I'm fine." Cold sweat seeped out of Lan Bingchen's forehead. He raised his head and looked at Nie Tian, then suddenly knelt down on one knee. "Your Highness the Crown Prince, this." Jin Mingxin was also taken aback. He never thought that Lan Bingchen, the dignified crown prince, would actually kneel down to Nie Tian. Jin Debao was stunned on the spot. He had no idea what was going on. "Your Highness the Crown Prince, what is the meaning of this?" Nie Tian slightly frowned, not knowing what Lan Bingchen was trying to do. Lan Bingchen raised his head and looked at Nie Tian with a solemn expression and said, "Mr. Nie, Grandmaster Zhang Yifeng and I are good friends. Furthermore, I am also an alchemist. Since Mr. Nie can be Grandmaster Zhang's teacher, you can also be my teacher. I was impulsive, please accept me as Mr. Nie's disciple." Nie Tian took a look at Lan Bingchen and said, "Spiritual power of level 24, you are a second-ranked alchemist, right?" Lan Bingchen nodded his head heavily. Towards Nie Tian being able to see through the strength of his spiritual power with just a glance, he did not find it strange at all. Lan Bingchen said even more respectfully, "Mr. Nie, I know that my talent is dull, and I don't dare to have any extravagant requests. I only hope that I can become Mr. Nie's disciple in name." Nie Tian shook his head slightly and said, "If you want to become my disciple in name, your talent is still far from enough. You better give up on this thought." That indifferent sentence caused Jin family's father and son and Lan Bingchen to be stunned on the spot. The dignified crown prince begged Nie Tian to accept him as his disciple in name, and Nie Tian actually rejected him. Chapter 76. It took Lan Bingchen a while to react. He didn't think that Nie Tian would reject him so bluntly. Nie Tian's reaction made Lan Bingchen feel a bit awkward. He looked at Jin Mingxin, clearly asking for help. Jin Mingxin deliberately avoided Lan Bingchen's gaze. At this time, he didn't want to interfere with Nie Tian's decision, and he felt that he couldn't. Nie Tian was clearly not the kind of person who would easily change his mind. "Your Highness, please get up. I won't accept you as my disciple," Nie Tian said lightly. "Not even as an honorary disciple?" Lan Bingchen looked up at Nie Tian, his expression incomparably disappointed. This was the first time he had received such a big blow in his life. Nie Tian said, "If you really want to become my disciple, then prove your talent to me." "How?" Lan Bingchen jumped up, suddenly full of spirit. Everyone had the spirit of not admitting defeat. If you say I can't do it, then I'll show you. Lan Bingchen was currently in this kind of mood. Nie Tian couldn't help but smile. Thinking for a moment, he said, "Have you refined the unblocking meridian pill before?" "Yes." Lan Bingchen nodded. The unblocking meridian pill is a second-grade spirit pill. It can help a cultivator unblock the small meridians in the body and improve their physique. Very good. Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, "I'll tell you another pill formula for the meridian connecting pill. If you can concoct the meridian connecting pill within a month, I'll accept you as my disciple in name." "There are other pill recipes for the unblocking meridian pill?" Lan Bingchen was startled. "Of course." Nie Tian smiled. "Purple Ganoderma, Heaven Essence Lotus, 3-leaf grass, Golden Sprout, and a second-grade wood attribute monster core. This is the pill recipe. You can determine the proportion of ingredients and the order of refinement yourself. No problem, right?" "No problem." Lan Bingchen nodded confidently. What Nie Tian said was a very simple pill recipe, but it was a great test of the alchemist's patience. The proportion of ingredients and the order of adding needed to be tested countless times. "Good, then I wish you good luck." Nie Tian smiled. He only gave Lan Bingchen 1 month. "Mr. Nie, I'll take my leave." Lan Bingchen bowed and said, not wanting to stay for too long. Nie Tian nodded slightly, and Jin Mingxin quickly said, "Take your leave, Crown Prince." "No need." Lan Bingchen seemed a little disappointed. She nodded and turned to leave. The guards at the door followed Lan Bingchen and left. Only when Lan Bingchen's figure completely disappeared did Jin Mingxin let out a long breath. "Father, the Crown Prince," Jin said. "Father, His Highness the Crown Prince has never had any contact with our family. Why did he suddenly appear this time? Don't tell me you're here to take me as your master?" Jean de Bao couldn't help but ask. Taking a sip of tea, Jin Mingxin turned to Nie Tian and said, "Indeed, Lan Bingchen came to the Jin mansion for Mr. Nie. He's really here to take me as his master." Jean de Bao let out a strange cry and said, "I thought he came because of the bet." In less than a day, the bet between Jean de Bao and Qin Yuhu had already spread throughout the entire Blue Cloud City. Almost everyone knew about it. Nie Tian, however, shook his head and said, "Lan Bingchen must have her own reasons for becoming my disciple." Jin Mingxin asked, "What does Mr. Nie think?" Nie Tian looked up and pondered for a moment before saying, "If my speculations are correct, Lan Bingchen wants me to defeat the Ice Knight Prince and become the Rookie King." "No way," de Bao said. "Crown Prince and Bing Yi are brothers. Does he not want his brother to win?" Jin Mingxin took a sip of tea and said with a faint smile, "De Bao, you're still too childish in thinking about things. Crown Prince and Bing Yi are brothers. They are both members of the royal family. They don't want to see the royal family's face hurt. But, if there's a conflict of interest, and the interest is big enough, then the brotherhood is not that important. They are both members of the royal family. What kind of conflict of interest could there be?" Jin de Bao still did not understand. Nie Tian understood. Mr. Jin means that Bing Yi is a threat to the Crown Prince's throne. Crown Prince doesn't want Bing Yi to be famous. Is that so? Jin Mingxin nodded and sighed. The royal family's affection is the thinnest. Especially between brothers. They all want the throne. If Bing Yi is a mediocre person, then he is the Crown Prince's good brother. But if he is a genius with ambition, then he will be the Crown Prince's biggest enemy. I see. Bing Yi also wants the throne. Crown Prince is afraid that his reputation will be too great and threaten his position. So he wants to use boss to suppress Bing Yi's fame. Even if de Bao was stupid, he should have understood now. Lan Bingji had said that a ruler must not joke. His ambition had been exposed. Jin Mingxin smiled, relieved that his son wasn't so stupid. Nie Tian smiled faintly and asked, "Mr. Jin, do you think I should fight for the Rookie King title or not?" Jin Mingxin also smiled and said, The bet between Debeo and Qin Yuhu looks like a joke between children on the surface, but if you look deeper, it's a contest between the Jin family and the Qin family. If you look deeper, it's actually a contest between the Crown Prince and Prince Binji for the throne. Here, Jin Mingxin sighed. Whether it's the Jin clan or Mr. Nye, we've unintentionally gotten involved in this battle. It's impossible to back out now. I just hope we're not on the wrong side. Dad, which team are we on? Jin Debeo was actually a bit excited as he asked. Jin Mingxin smiled bitterly. You've made a bet with Qin Yuhu. Do we have a choice? We can only support the Crown Prince. Dad, you want Boss to fight for the Rookie King? Debeo grinned. He was afraid that Jin Mingxin would stop Nye Tian from fighting for the Rookie King. Fight. Jin Mingxin suddenly stood up. My Jin clan's first-grade house cannot be handed over to the Qin clan. Nye Tian nodded and smiled faintly. Unintentionally getting involved in the battle for the throne wasn't what Nye Tian wanted. But since he was already involved, he wasn't afraid. Nye Tian was a rock that had the power to change the direction of a river. Jin Mingxin suddenly looked at Nye Tian and said, Actually, the Crown Prince wants Mr. Nye to be his master for another reason. What do you mean? Nye Tian asked. Jin Mingxin nodded. The Crown Prince wants Mr. Nye to be his master because he wants to rope in the Alchemist Guild. Rope in the Alchemist Guild? Nye Tian was stunned. Yes. Jin Mingxin nodded and said, Mr. Nye is already Grandmaster Zhang Yifeng's teacher, and Zhang Yifeng's position in the Alchemist Guild is very high. The next Alchemist Guild president will most likely be Grandmaster Zhang Yifeng. If the Crown Prince takes Mr. Nye as his master, not only will he receive Mr. Nye's support, but he will also become Grandmaster Zhang Yifeng's apprentice brother. Naturally, he will receive the Alchemist Guild's support. I have to say, the Crown Prince's move is very good. Unfortunately, Mr. Nye is more powerful and doesn't put him in his eyes. Chapter 77. Nye Tian looked at Jin Mingxin and smiled faintly, asking, The Alchemist Guild shouldn't be participating in the fight for the throne, right? Nye Tian knew how terrifying the Alchemist Guild was. He believed that the Alchemist Guild would disdain to interfere in this worldly power struggle. Jin Mingxin nodded. They haven't interfered in the past, I wonder if they will this time. Nye Tian nodded. A strange expression suddenly flashed past his eyes as he asked, Mr. Jin, do you know of the Bloodbat sect? Bloodbat sect? Jin Mingxin was slightly startled. Seeing Nye Tian's strange expression, he asked, Why would Mr. Nye suddenly ask about the Bloodbat sect? Could it be that you have a grudge with this organization? Nye Tian nodded and said in a deep voice, A blood feud that will not end until one party is dead. Since ancient times, the feud of killing one's father was absolutely irreconcilable. The Bloodbat sect killed Nye Tian's father, so Nye Tian must remove the Bloodbat sect from the 3,000 Lesser World. Jin Mingxin swallowed his saliva and said, What grudge does Mr. Nye have with the Bloodbat sect? The Bloodbat sect killed my father. Nye Tian did not avoid the topic and said directly. Jin Mingxin was startled for a moment and said, Since Mr. Nye mentioned the Bloodbat sect, then let me tell you about the current power distribution in the Imperial City. All right. Nye Tian nodded. He also wanted to know the current situation in Blue Cloud City. Jin Mingxin saw that Nye Tian was very interested and nodded. In Blue Cloud Imperial City, the strongest power is naturally the royal family. The royal family controls the Blue Cloud Army, and there is also the Imperial Guard Army in Blue Cloud City. They are extremely powerful and rule over the entire kingdom. However, there are a few other powers that are not under the control of the royal family, and can even contend with the royal family. For example, the Alchemist Guild, Bloodbat Sect, Blue Cloud Commerce, and the Black Market. Bloodbat Sect. Hearing this organization again, Nye Tian's expression changed slightly. The Bloodbat Sect's influence in the kingdom of Blue Clouds was very strong. It was actually strong enough to contend against the royal family. Jin Mingxin knew that Nie Tian was more interested in the Bloodbat sect, so he continued, "The Bloodbat sect is an underground martial arts organization, as well as an assassin organization. There are many vicious and evil people gathered in it, and they even raise a large number of assassins. Even the royal family doesn't dare to provoke them." Furthermore, the royal family and the Bloodbat sect had a close relationship. The current empress, who is also the birth mother of Binji Prince, is said to be the Bloodbat sect master's junior sister. Nie Tian nodded slightly. He did not expect that the royal family and the Bloodbat sect, two seemingly irreconcilable factions, would have such a close relationship. "The empress is a member of the Qin family, right?" Nie Tian asked. He remembered that Qin Yulong had once said that the empress was his aunt. "Yes," Jin Mingxin said, "the empress is the younger sister of the Qin family's patriarch, Qin Yetian. It is because of this relationship that Qin Yetian is able to command the imperial guard." Nie Tian nodded lightly and asked, "What about the other organizations?" Jin Mingxin continued, "The Alchemists Guild and the Blue Cloud Chamber of Commerce, one controls all the alchemists, while the other controls more than 30% of the Empire's asset. More importantly, the Alchemists Guild and the Blue Cloud Chamber of Commerce are small branches of the Alchemists Guild headquarters and the Martial Gathering Chamber of Commerce respectively. They are only the representatives of these two super forces in the Blue Cloud Empire. Therefore, the royal family doesn't dare to offend these two organizations." Furthermore, Jin Mingxin paused, then continued, "The Alchemists Guild and the Martial Gathering Chamber of Commerce are spread throughout the mini-Sumer world, so the attitude of the Alchemists Guild and the Blue Cloud Chamber of Commerce directly affects the Blue Cloud Emperor's every decision. It is not an exaggeration to say that even when it comes to determining the future heir, the Bloodbat sect, the Alchemists Guild and the Blue Cloud Chamber of Commerce, these three forces have a certain say." Nie Tian nodded, deeply agreeing. The heir was the future emperor. If this future emperor was rejected by the various forces, his position as emperor would definitely not be stable. Of course, whether it was the Alchemists Guild or the Blue Cloud Chamber of Commerce, they were mutually supportive of the royal family. Under normal circumstances, they would not go against the royal family. Under normal circumstances, the Alchemists Guild and the Blue Cloud Chamber of Commerce symbolically submitted to the royal family. To a certain extent, they accepted the royal family's management. However, when it came to their own interests, the Alchemists Guild and the Blue Cloud Chamber of Commerce would definitely not give in. Even the royal family would not dare to forcefully intervene. As for the Bloodbat sect, it was a force that was not under the royal family's control. They only did not interfere with each other. "Dad, aren't you the president of the Blue Cloud Chamber of Commerce?" Jean de Bao seemed to have thought of something and couldn't help but feel excited. He already knew that Jin Mingxin was the president of the Blue Cloud Chamber of Commerce, but he didn't know that the Blue Cloud Chamber of Commerce had such a heavy say in the Blue Cloud Empire. The reason why the Jin family was known as the richest family in the imperial city was not only because they were rich, but more importantly, because Jin Mingxin was the president of the Blue Cloud Chamber of Commerce. "Stinking brat, you just found out that your dad is so powerful?" Jin Mingxin smiled faintly. Nie Tian was also slightly taken aback. Jin Mingxin's identity surprised him quite a bit. According to the distribution of power in the Blue Cloud Empire, there should be 4 giants in the Blue Cloud Empire. The Blue Cloud Emperor, the president of the Alchemists Guild, the president of the Blue Cloud Chamber of Commerce, and the leader of the Bloodbat sect. Who would have thought that the kind-looking Jin Mingxin was actually one of the 4 giants of the Blue Cloud Empire? The Blue Cloud Chamber of Commerce was backed by the Martial Gathering Chamber of Commerce. From this aspect, the Jin family's foundation was even stronger than the royal family. After knowing all these, Nie Tian knew what was going on in his heart. At the same time, in the Bingyi Palace, Lan Binji was holding an exquisite three-legged wine cup. He took a sip and immediately revealed a comfortable smile. "Your Highness, who are we waiting for?" Qin Yuhu stood at the side and asked respectfully. The two of them had already waited for more than an hour. Qin Yuhu couldn't wait any longer. Lan Binji smiled faintly. His gaze suddenly looked out. His eyes flashed and he said, "She's here." Qin Yuhu turned around. Suddenly, he discovered that a figure had appeared at the door. Like a ghost, it was silent. The person who came was completely shrouded in a black robe. He couldn't see her face clearly. Judging from her figure, she seemed to be a young girl in her teens. "Tang Yuyu, you're finally here." Lan Binji had a smile on his face. He seemed to be very happy. Tang Yuyu, who was shrouded in the black robe, slightly raised his head. He seemed to look at Lan Binji and said in a deep voice, "Lan Binji, a small freshman martial gathering has to trouble the sect master. Should I say that you're trash?" Her voice was very pleasant to listen to. It was also very cold. Furthermore, it revealed a suffocating pressure. "Impudent! Who gave you the guts to actually dare to speak to His Highness like this?" Qin Yuhu roared in anger. It was as if Tang Yuyu was scolding him. "Pa!" In the next moment, a clear slap sounded. Half of Qin Yuhu's face immediately swelled up. You dare to hit me?" Qin Yuhu was completely confused. He looked at Tang Yuyu, who was under the black robe, in shock. "Trash!" Tang Yuyu reprimanded coldly. He then said to Lan Binji, "Don't take in this kind of useless subordinate in the future. Junior sister, you really care too much. This king likes to raise useless dogs. Can't I?" Lan Binji smiled sinisterly. "Useless dogs, even if you raise them, they would only be a waste of dog food." Tang Yuyu said cold, "I will appear at the martial gathering tomorrow. I will ensure that you will be able to get the newcomer king." Chapter 78. Only when Tang Yuyu's figure completely disappeared did Qin Yuhu slowly walk out of his trembling state. Tang Yuyu gave him a terrifying and oppressive feeling. It was as if breathing in front of this person had become difficult. Qin Yuhu was a manifestation realm martial practitioner, but he didn't see how Tang Yuyu attacked. Without a doubt, Tang Yuyu's strength was far above Qin Yuhu's. Your Highness, who is this person?" Qin Yuhu was still in shock as he asked with a trembling voice. Lan Binji glanced at Qin Yuhu and smiled playfully. "Are you sure you want to ask this question?" Qin Yuhu immediately trembled and said, "This lowly one was wrong, this lowly one spoke too much." Lan Binji chuckled and said, "You aren't too stupid. Remember, some things the less you know, the better. Now scram. This lowly one will take his leave." Qin Yuhu bowed and quickly retreated. No matter who the person was, Qin Yuhu knew that this person was not someone he could afford to offend. However, he was very happy because Tang Yuyu said that he would guarantee that Lan Binji would get the rookie king. This undoubtedly added another guarantee to the bet. Lan Binji felt much more at ease. With Tang Yuyu's guarantee, he was very confident. Tang Yuyu was none other than the adopted daughter of the Blood Bat sect master. Lan Binji's mother, the Empress, was the junior sister of the Blood Bat sect master, so he called Tang Yuyu junior sister. Lan Binji didn't know much about Tang Yuyu. He only knew that Tang Yuyu was a genius martial practitioner that the Blood Bat sect master brought back from Sumeru's spirit capital 8 years ago. She was only 14 years old now, but she was already the #1 assassin of the Blood Bat sect. Many of the people who had died in her hands were experts whose names shook a region. A 14-year-old female assassin, just thinking about it made people shudder. Lan Binji knew that Tang Yuyu never failed. With her present at the martial gathering tomorrow, there would be no mistakes. The next morning, when Ye Tian walked out of the room, Jean de Bao and the others were already waiting outside. "Boss, let's hurry to Tyrant Cloud Academy. Today was the day of the martial gathering." Jean de Bao was clearly even more excited than Ye Tian. "Big brother Ye Tian, I want to go too." Nye carried little Guai out of the room. Yes. Nye Tian nodded lightly. He had changed into a new set of clothes today, and his entire person looked like a new man. He was in high spirits and appeared very sharp. All of them didn't delay any longer and immediately headed for Tyrant Cloud Academy. Tyrant Cloud Academy's martial arena. Early in the morning, many people had gathered outside the martial field. They were all 15 or 16-year-old youths, and they were all fighting to be the first to surround a red list. The final results of yesterday's test were posted on the red roll. The top 180 people were qualified to enter Tyrant Cloud Academy and become its new students. They're only recruiting 180 people this year, and I'm ranked 182. What a tragedy! Someone sighed with a depressed expression. What tragedy are you talking about? I'm ranked 181st. F***CK. Last year, they were recruiting 200 people. Why were they only recruiting 180 people this year? The heavens are truly jealous of such a talented person. The other person couldn't help but sigh. He was on the verge of going crazy. He was just one rank away from entering Tyrant Cloud. Wow. I'm 79th. Qiu Ling was very excited as she stood at the edge of the crowd. Sister Ling is awesome. Beside Qiu Ling, Nye was hugging Xiao Guai, looking very cute. Haha, boss is indeed number one. Jean de Bao stared at the red roll and laughed proudly. At the top of the red roll was a name, Nye Tian. Qiu Shan also laughed. Mr. Nye shattered the strength testing steel during the test of strength. He deserves to be number one. Uncle Qiu Shan, why did big brother Nye Tian get 20 points, and I only get 8? Qiu Ling didn't understand. She pouted, clearly unconvinced. Qiu Ling thought that her talent was already very good, but she only got 8 points. She was a far cry from Nye Tian. Qiu Shan was also stunned when he saw Nye Tian's score. 20 points. That was the full score. Full score. How was that possible? He could get full score in the test of strength, but how could he get full score in the test of primordial spirit? If he got full score in the primordial spirit test, it meant that his primordial spirit was of the 10th stage. A 10th stage primordial spirit? Did it exist? But when he remembered that the person who tested Nye Tian's primordial spirit was Zhang Yifeng, Qiu Shan understood. Soon, the others also noticed Nye Tian's full score. This news spread like the wind. After a while, everyone knew that a person had gotten full score in Tyrant Cloud Academy's test of freshmen. This was very amazing. One had to know that in the history of Tyrant Cloud Academy, there had never been a person who got full score. In this way, Nye Tian's limelight was truly unparalleled. Everyone was fighting to discuss Nye Tian's full score, and they even forgot that there was an imperial prince participating in the freshman martial meet this year. Let's go. Nye Tian didn't want to stay for too long, so he turned and left. The crowd behind him was in a complete uproar. Look, that guy is Nye Tian, Grandmaster Zhang Yifeng's teacher. He got full score in the test. Is this guy a monster? Yeah, to be able to become Grandmaster Zhang Yifeng's teacher, his alchemy cultivation must be terrifying. Moreover, his martial arts talent is so abnormal. How can anyone live? The most important thing is that he's so young, he's simply a monster. The crowd was in an uproar, pointing and discussing behind Nye Tian. Coincidentally, just as Nye Tian and the others left, Lan Binji just happened to appear. Qin Yuhu and Qin Feng followed behind him. Originally, Lan Binji was prepared that his appearance would definitely cause a commotion. After all, a prince participating in the freshman martial meet was unprecedented. However, his appearance was completely ignored by everyone. Everyone's attention was focused on Nye Tian, and they didn't even notice Lan Binji's arrival. Lan Binji's face was gloomy, and he glared fiercely at Nye Tian, as if he wanted to kill someone. But Nye Tian completely ignored all of this. He left directly, completely ignoring Lan Binji's existence. The figures of the few quickly disappeared, but everyone was still looking in the direction they disappeared. From start to end, Nie Tian didn't say a word, but he took all the limelight. Everyone's eyes were fixed on him, not moving away for even a second. Lan Binji looked at the disappearing back view, his handsome face almost trembling, a ball of suppressed anger in his chest, unable to swallow it nor spit it out. Nie Tian. Nie Tian. If this prince doesn't kill you, I'm not human. Lan Binji roared in his heart, cold. He turned around. The limelight was stolen by Nie Tian, there was no meaning in him staying any longer. The Qin Yuhu and Qin Feng brothers also had expressions of resentment. Originally, Qin Feng also had hopes of competing for the newcomer king, but now, he was basically just a side character. Even if he had the confidence to fight with Nie Tian, he couldn't compete with Prince Binji. But the Qin brothers were still very happy. They firmly believed that even Nie Tian couldn't possibly be Prince Binji's match. Chapter 79. Nie Tian and the others entered the martial arena and found a remote location, quietly waiting for the freshman martial gathering to begin. Nie Tian did not want to be in the limelight. Although the feeling of being the center of attention was not bad, he knew that, on the path of martial arts, it was not about being the center of attention. Moreover, he had to continuously move forward, even if no one was paying attention to him. He had to be firm on his own path, never stopping. Only in this way could he go further. A moment later, important figures appeared in the martial arena one after another. Blue Tyrant Academy's vice principal Fan Jinwu sat on the main seat of the martial arena, his eyes sharp like a quiet lion. For the freshman martial gathering, some of the important forces and figures of Blue Cloud City would also be invited. This time, the person from the Alchemist Association who came to support was none other than Zhang Yifeng. On the royal family's side, the person who appeared this time was the commander of the Imperial Guards, Qin Yetian. Besides being the commander of the Imperial Guards, Qin Yetian had another identity, Qin Yuhu's father. At the same time, he was also Lan Binji's uncle. As for the Blue Cloud Commerce, they did not send anyone, they rarely participated in these matters. Besides the people from the Alchemist Association and the royal family, other large clans, small academies, and small sects also sent people to observe. Tyrant Cloud Academy's freshman martial gathering, without any exaggeration, gathered the most talented youths of Blue Cloud Empire. After the various people arrived, they all took their seat. Zhang Yifeng sat on the lower left side of Fan Jinwu, facing Qin Yetian who sat on the lower right side. Qin Yetian looked to be around 40 years old, tall and sturdy, with a resolute expression, giving people a very tough feeling. Master Zhang, I heard that you recently acknowledged a teacher. It seems to be a teenager, is that true? Qin Yetian looked at Zhang Yifeng with a profound gaze. Although his tone was calm, the ridicule in his words was very obvious. Zhang Yifeng's reaction was very cold, indifferently saying, "This is my own matter, it has nothing to do with Commander Qin." Regarding the grudge between Nie Tian and the Qin clan, as well as the bet between Jin Debao and Qin Yuhu, Zhang Yifeng had also heard of it. But he was very confident in Nie Tian, and in his heart, he had a faint feeling that acknowledging Nie Tian as his teacher was very possibly the best decision he had ever made. Ha ha! Qin Yetian laughed loudly and said, "It seems like the rumor is true, Master Zhang really took that stinky brat as his master. This kind of thing is really an eye-opener." Qin Yetian had long heard of Nie Tian's name. Furthermore, Nie Tian had castrated his third son, Qin Yulang, and even injured Qin Yuhu. But since the beginning, Qin Yetian hadn't taken Nie Tian seriously, and he felt that the latter was only an ant. Only after confirming the relationship between Zhang Yifeng and Nie Tian did Qin Yetian truly view Nie Tian as an enemy worthy of his attention. Governor Qin. Zhang Yifeng's eyes suddenly turned cold and he said coldly, "You insulted my master in front of me. Are you looking down on me?" Qin Yetian was stunned. He did not expect Zhang Yifeng to have such a big reaction. From the looks of it, he was really going to turn hostile. Master Zhang, don't be angry. Governor Qin did not mean it. Fan Jinwu saw that the situation was not right and quickly persuaded. Qin Yetian's face stiffened, but he still said, I spoke too quickly. If I have offended you in any way, I hope Master Zhang can be magnanimous enough to forgive me. Zhang Yifeng was a third-ranked alchemist and a young genius. His status in the Alchemist Association was very high. Even Qin Yetian did not dare to offend him. Zhang Yifeng snorted coldly and said, If Governor Qin speaks rudely again, don't blame this master for turning hostile. After that, Zhang Yifeng no longer cared about Qin Yetian. Qin Yetian and Fan Jinwu exchanged glances but did not dare to say anything. A moment later, Tyrant Cloud Academy's freshman martial meet officially began. The 180 freshmen were divided into 4 groups. Each group would decide on 2 experts to advance to the finals. Very quickly, Nie Tian received his participation token, the first group. Coincidentally, Chiu Ling was also in the first group, number 30. Big brother Nie Tian, when the 2 of us fight later, you have to go easy on me. Chiu Ling held the token and giggled. She was gradually getting familiar with Nie Tian and was no longer as shy as before. Nie Tian smiled faintly. He did not say yes or no. He was determined to become the newcomer king. If he met Chiu Ling he could go easy on her, but he would never let her win. Preliminary round, first match of Group 1, number 1 versus number 13. On the stage, a gray-robed martial artist announced the first match. Nie Tian was slightly stunned. He did not expect that he would be the first to fight. Nie Tian did not hesitate. After greeting the crowd, he strode over and stepped onto the stage. Nie Tian. Standing on the raised platform, Fan Jinwu's eyes lit up as soon as he saw Nie Tian, and his expression stiffened. Oh? Dean Fan, you know Nie Tian too? Qin Yetian rolled his eyes and asked in surprise. Mr. Nie is Master Zhang's teacher. He is now a famous person in Blue Cloud City. Who doesn't know him? Fan Jinwu smiled stiffly. His expression did not change much, but his heart was in turmoil. Fan Jinwu already knew that Qiu Shan had returned and that Nie Tian and Qiu Shan had a close relationship. Fan Jinwu was the culprit who had framed Qiu Shan back then. The 2 were mortal enemies. Therefore, Fan Jinwu had unknowingly regarded Nie Tian as an enemy as well. Oh! Qin Yetian nodded slightly, but he did not want to let it go. His eyes flashed and he smiled. I heard that your younger brother, Mr. Fan Jinji, once wanted to teach Nie Tian a lesson but was stopped by Dean Qi. Is that true? Fan Jinwu's expression stiffened. A murderous glint flashed in his eyes, but it quickly disappeared. He laughed dryly. It's just a rumor. Jinji is a man of status. How could he fight with someone else so easily? Hee, that's true. Qin Yetian laughed. This commander also thinks that Mr. Fan Jinji's status is extraordinary. He would definitely disdain to attack someone of unknown status. Fan Jinwu nodded. His gaze turned to Nie Tian, who was on the stage. His chest became more and more stuffy. Zhang Yifeng listened to the conversation between the 2, but he did not say anything. When Nie Tian stepped onto the stage, he immediately attracted everyone's attention. They did not expect to see the battle of a famous figure in the first round. They could not help but look forward to it. Nie Tian, this prince wants to see just what kind of ability you have. You dare to fight with this prince for the newcomer king title. You really don't know how to write the word death. Below the stage, Lan Binji coldly stared at Nie Tian and said in his heart. On the other side, there was also a gaze locked onto Nie Tian. Lan Bingchen was hidden in the crowd, looking at Nie Tian from afar. His lips curled into a faint smile as he said in his heart, Nie Tian, don't disappoint this prince. Anyone can be the newcomer king, but not Lan Binji. Lan Bingchen and Lan Binji, the two brothers, had completely different thoughts at this moment. These two were brothers on the surface, but in reality, they were mortal enemies who had yet to shed all pretense of cordiality. The reason why Lan Bingchen wanted to become Nie Tian's disciple was to borrow Nie Tian's strength. Chapter 80. Nie Tian's first opponent was a yellow-robed youth, around 15 or 16 years old, his cultivation reaching level 4 essence spirit. Looking at his appearance, he was very ordinary. There was some arrogance in his eyes and also some fear. Clearly, this was a commoner. For a commoner to be able to cultivate to level 4 essence spirit at such a young age, his talent was pretty good. The yellow-robed youth stepped forward, cupping his fists and saying, "This one is Zhao He, please." Nie Tian nodded slightly. Since the other party was being somewhat courteous, he would not be too arrogant either. He said lightly, "Nie Tian, please. Be careful." Zhao He was polite with his words, but his hands were not. With a loud shout, the phantom of an essence spirit appeared behind him. It was actually a golden-patterned leopard, its aura sharp and fierce, its speed extremely fast. Like a bolt of yellow lightning, it attacked Nie Tian. Attacking in an instant, seizing the initiative, Zhao He wanted to catch Nie Tian off guard. Nie Tian was currently in the limelight. There was no one in the arena who did not know him. If they could defeat him, they would definitely become famous in one battle. The golden-patterned leopard charged over domineeringly, like a ball of blazing fire, emitting a terrifying aura. With Zhao He's aura, even a level 5 essence spirit expert would not dare to meet force with force after he seized the initiative. Nie Tian stood where he was, his feet not moving an inch. Clenching his fist slightly, he raised his arm and punched out. It looked like an ordinary action, but it erupted with a shocking aura. The sound of something tearing through the air immediately sounded out. Bang! A muffled sound rang out. The golden-patterned leopard's phantom shook violently in the air, actually being scattered by one punch. Arg! The next second, Zhao He let out a miserable cry, his figure flying out, falling off the arena and landing in a daze. The crowd immediately let out cries of surprise. No one would have thought that the first battle would actually be so clean and tidy. Zhao He crawled up, clutching his chest. Raising his head to look at Nie Tian, there was some additional respect in his eyes. He cupped his hands and said, "Many thanks for showing mercy." Although Zhao He had taken the initiative to attack and was a little scheming, he still knew his limits. He knew that Nie Tian had not used his full strength, otherwise, he would have definitely died on the spot. Speaking of which, Nie Tian was the same as Zhao He, both at the 4th level essence spirit realm. However, his battle prowess was even stronger than the average 9th level essence spirit realm martial artist. Earlier on, he had already intentionally restrained his strength and didn't use his martial skill astral soul. He had even intentionally controlled his own strength. If not for that, Zhao He would have died without a doubt. Nie Tian didn't say much as he stepped off the martial stage. On the high platform of the martial field, several people's faces were gloomy and uncertain. No one knew what they were thinking. Fan Jinwu was slightly surprised and said in his heart, "This kid can actually defeat an opponent of the same level in one move, and he is even deliberately restraining his strength. This is somewhat strange. It seems that what Jin Ji said was true. This brat can really defeat Qin Yuhu." Originally, Fan Jinwu did not believe that Nie Tian had defeated Qin Yuhu. After all, Qin Yuhu was an all-creation martial artist. How could a 4th level essence spirit martial artist be his match? Therefore, he guessed that this matter was most likely an exaggeration. However, it seemed that he was beginning to believe that Nie Tian had the strength to defeat Qin Yuhu. At this moment, Qin Yetian's expression also changed. There was less ridicule on his face and more seriousness. Nie Tian had already formed enmity with the Qin family and had close ties with the Jin family. Qin Yetian originally thought that Nie Tian was merely a little loach, unable to stir up any big waves. However, from the looks of it now, this little loach was very likely to be a formidable opponent for Lan Binji. Nia Tian, is it? The corners of Qin Yetian's mouth curled up slightly as he laughed coldly in his heart. No matter who you are, if you want to steal the limelight of the imperial family, then you must be prepared to die. Qin Yetian was not only the commander of the imperial guards, he was also Lan Binji's uncle. As a prince, if Lan Binji participated in the martial meet and did not obtain the title of newcomer king, then the imperial family would be slapped in the face. The imperial family's dignity would definitely be damaged because of this. Such a thing absolutely could not happen. The reason why the emperor let Qin Yetian come and watch the Tyrant Cloud freshman martial meet was to ensure that Lan Binji could get the rookie king title. At the critical moment, they could even take special measures. Seeing that Nye Tian's strength was so strange, Zhang Yifeng rejoiced in his heart. He felt even more that acknowledging Nye Tian as his master was a correct decision. On the other side, just as Nye Tian walked down the martial stage, the first battle of the second group similarly came to a conclusion. Die! An explosive roar sounded out. A round thing carrying a trace of blood flew down the martial stage. A skinny youth stood on the martial stage, akin to a block of ice. His entire body emitted a cold aura, making people palpitate. Beneath his feet was a headless corpse. Blood gushed out like a fountain, dyeing the martial stage red. This scene swiftly gathered the attention of the entire audience. Has he killed someone? Isn't this a competition? Why did he kill someone? This person's strength is too strong. He's at least Origin Spirit level 9 strength. The crowd discussed quietly, looking at the youth on the stage with fear. What a cruel method, to actually cut off the opponent's head with one sword. Nye Tian also glanced at the skinny youth. He saw a pair of crimson-red eyes filled with anger. This youth was also looking at Nye Tian. Boss, he's Liang Yunlong. Zhuozhuo reminded Nye Tian in a low voice. Qin Fun, Liang Yunlong, Ling Yun, these three people were specially reminded by Qiu Yan. Liang Yunlong's figure leaped down the martial stage, landing on the ground about 5 meters away from Nye Tian. A pair of vicious eyes stared at Nye Tian. He said coldly, Nye Tian, I'm Liang Yunlong. You're very lucky that you didn't meet me. Otherwise, that headless corpse would be you. Is that so? Nye Tian smiled faintly. It was very strange. He didn't know Liang Yunlong at all, so why did the latter want to kill him? Liang Yunlong nodded solemnly and said coldly, You better pray that you don't meet me, or else I'll definitely kill you with my own hands. Nye Tian glanced at the headless corpse and said indifferently, With just you? Liang Yunlong killed his opponent with one sword, and even cut off his head this way. From this, it could be seen that not only was this person strong, his temperament was even more brutal to the extreme. The new martial meet was originally just a normal sparring session. There was completely no need to kill. However, Liang Yunlong killed the moment he made a move. It was enough to see how vicious his methods were. Nye Tian could already see that Liang Yunlong's strength was the same as Qin Fun's, also Origin Spirit level 9. Moreover, his Origin Spirit was the most terrifying sword spirit. Battle strength comparable to all creation's martial artists. However, this kind of strength was still not enough to make Nye Tian feel apprehensive, and even more impossible to make him retreat. You will soon pay the price for your arrogance. After Liang Yunlong said this, coldly turned around. Nye Tian's expression was indifferent, not revealing the slightest ripple. Boss, Liang Yunlong is also a young genius of Blue Cloud City. You're currently in the limelight, stealing the limelight of these geniuses. Many people want to use this opportunity to suppress you and raise their own fame, Jean Debao said to Nye Tian. So that's how it is. Nye Tian could not help smiling bitterly. Looks like there was a saying that was very true. We don't like others being in the limelight because that hinders us from being in the limelight. Liang Yunlong originally wanted to rely on the new martial meet to become famous. He did not expect that first there was a Lan Binji, followed by a Nye Tian. The appearance of these two people directly made his name disappear. Liang Yunlong did not dare to make things difficult for Lan Binji. He could only vent the anger in his heart on Nye Tian. However, how could Nye Tian be the kind of person who would casually let others vent their anger? The commotion caused by Liang Yunlong did not subside for a long time. The crowd kept discussing in low voices. Especially the conversation between Nye Tian and Liang Yunlong, it made everyone unable to help but have special anticipation, hoping to see the moment when the two people faced off. The new martial meet this time was destined to be a reign of terror. But Nye Tian did not care too much. No matter who the opponent was, he was determined to become the new king. Chapter 81. The tournament continued. Nye Tian carefully observed each and every match that followed. However, he didn't find anyone worthy of his attention. Preliminaries, Group 1, Match 16. Number 17 versus number 30, the gray-robed cultivator announced on the arena. Number 30, it's me. Qiu Ling reacted. She was not nervous at all, but excited. Qiu Shan, on the other hand, was very nervous. Miss Ling don't force yourself. If you can fight, then fight. If you can't, then admit defeat. I understand, Uncle Qiu Shan. Qiu Ling nodded. I believe Sister Ling will win, Nye Yuro said seriously, looking up at Qiu Ling with Xiao Guai in her arms. Qiu Ling nodded and walked out. Miss Ling is very strong. As long as her opponent is not a level 9 origin spirit cultivator, she can fight, Nye Tian said, looking at Qiu Ling's back. Nye Tian had already sensed that Qiu Ling was a level 3 origin spirit cultivator, but her origin spirit was a sword spirit, and a very strong one at that. Nye Tian estimated that Qiu Ling's origin spirit talent was around level 5. A sword spirit was not a strength-type origin spirit. The fact that Qiu Ling could pass the strength test with level 3 origin spirit showed that her origin spirit talent was not bad. Qiu Shan nodded. He was much more at ease with Nye Tian's words. However, when Qiu Shan saw Qiu Ling's opponent on the arena, his face froze. Qin Fun. Qiu Shan's eyes widened. He had not expected Qiu Ling to be so unlucky that her first opponent would be Qin Fun. Qin Fun was a level 9 origin spirit cultivator and a seated disciple of the newcomer king. Qiu Ling was no match for him. Miss Ling come down. Don't fight anymore. Just admit defeat. Qiu Shan stepped forward and shouted. Qiu Ling looked back and smiled. Uncle Qiu Shan, it's fine. Trust me. Qiu Ling was very confident in herself. She did not seem to be afraid of Qin Fun. Qin Fun had already seen Qiu Ling with Nye Tian, Jean Debao, and the others. He already had an idea. He sneered and said, Uncle, she is the one competing, not you. Why do you care so much? Whatever I want to do, it's none of your business. Qiu Shan panicked when he saw Qin Feng's sinister look. He suddenly jumped onto the stage and grabbed Qiu Ling. Ling listen to me. We admit defeat. Uncle Qiu Shan, I won't give up. Qiu Ling was stubborn. Do you want to admit defeat? At this time, the gray-robed martial artist of Tyrant Cloud Academy spoke. He suddenly took a step forward and slightly leaned his body to the side. A vigorous force was flung out and directly knocked Qiu Shan off the martial arts arena. Qiu Shan fell from the stage and almost fell. Fortunately, he was supported by Nye Tian. The gray-robed martial artist stared at Qiu Shan coldly and reprimanded, You are not a participant, so you do not have the qualifications to step onto the stage. Since it's your first offense, I'll let you off. If you dare to step onto the stage again, don't blame me for being merciless. Little brother, thank you for your mercy. Qiu Shan was not injured, so the black-robed martial artist was not ruthless. The gray-robed martial artist said coldly, You must admit defeat from the stage. She has already stepped onto the stage. It's too late to admit defeat. Alas! Qiu Shan could not help but sigh, knowing that there was no turning back. Qiu Ling knew that Qiu Shan was worried about her, but she was not nervous. Instead, she said confidently, "Uncle Qiu Shan, don't worry. I'll be fine." Jean de Bao saw the hostility in Qin Feng's eyes and said, "Qin Feng, you'd better not hurt Ling or I will not let you off." "Really?" Qin Feng sneered with disdain and provoked. "I'd like to know how young Master Jean will not let me off." "Fatty, shut up. I haven't lost yet." Qiu Ling rolled her eyes at Jean de Bao and looked unconvinced. Jean de Bao still wanted to say something, but he was stopped by Nie Tian. Nie Tian said, "Don't affect her mentality. She's confident, so she must have something to rely on. We just have to believe in her." In a battle between martial artists, mentality was also very important, apart from strength. If one was scared before the battle, one would definitely lose, even if one was stronger than the opponent. Nie Tian could tell that Qiu Ling was a very intelligent girl. Although she was a little stubborn, she was not the kind of person who would foolishly cause trouble. Since she dared to step onto the stage, she must have something to rely on. "Are you done with your bullshit? I'm going to make my move." Qin Feng smiled coldly and was ready to attack. Jean de Bao and Qiu Shan were worried, but there was nothing they could do. They could only take a step back and watch the stage nervously. Because Qin Feng had stepped onto the stage, many people were watching the battle. Qiu Ling looked at Qin Feng, and her pretty face gradually turned cold, revealing a terrifying calmness. Qin Feng smiled disdainfully and said, "Little sister, don't worry. I'm a man who has tender feelings for the fairer sex. I won't kill you. I'll only destroy your key meridians." "Humph." Qiu Ling raised her snow-white chin and said stubbornly, "Do you have that ability?" Clang! She raised her arm, and a long and thin sword appeared behind her. It was sharp and agile like a small snake, unusually agile. The spirit snake illusory sword was Qiu Ling's primordial spirit. Spirit snake comes out of its hole. Qiu Ling knew that Qin Feng was very strong, so her first move was not a direct attack, but a probing move. The spirit snake illusory sword drew a sword flower in the air. The sword curved a few times, and a shadow surged out. Qin Feng stood firmly on the spot, not moving at all. His eyes were fixed on the spirit snake illusory sword's primordial spirit behind Qiu Ling. Just as the illusory sword was about to hit Qin Feng, a powerful force suddenly surged out from behind him. With just a slight movement, the illusory sword's primordial spirit immediately shattered. The spirit snake illusory sword seemed to be provoked, and it shrank back. Qin Feng was a rank 9 origin spirit cultivator, but Qiu Ling was only a rank 4 origin spirit cultivator. There was too much of a difference in their strength. Moreover, Qin Feng's primordial spirit of the sky hegemon hammer was no weaker than the spirit snake illusory sword's primordial spirit. Therefore, Qiu Ling was no match for him in a head-on fight. Nie Tian nodded lightly below the stage. He thought to himself, the advantage of the spirit snake illusory sword's primordial spirit lies in its agility. If Qiu Ling can display this intelligence, there might be a surprise. Of course, Nie Tian knew that no matter how agile Qiu Ling was, she was no match for Qin Feng. However, if she could display her agility perfectly, she would at least be able to protect herself. After repelling Qiu Ling with a single move, Qin Feng mocked, "Little girl, is that all you've got? Then I'm going to make a move." "Do you think it's your turn to make a move?" Qiu Ling shouted. She put her palms together and charged forward. The spirit snake illusory sword spun in the air, and primordial spirit surged out from the tip of the sword and attacked Qin Feng. Dancing snake wave. Qiu Ling attacked again. She did not hold back anymore. The spirit snake illusory sword was swift and agile, and it stabbed out in the air. As soon as the sword moved, 7 sword shadows appeared and attacked Qin Feng at the same time. Is that all? Qin Feng smiled cold, and the primordial spirit of the sky dominating hammer struck out. Just then, something strange happened. The 7 sword shadows suddenly spun in the air and turned into 49 shadows. Chapter 82. Qin Feng was taken aback by the sudden turn of events. Anger flashed across his face. The primordial spirit of the sky tyrant hammer surged with a terrifying aura and struck the water screen in front of him. Sky Tyrant Strike. The primordial spirit of the sky tyrant hammer struck the center of the water screen. All of Qiu Ling-er's sword techniques crumbled. Qiu Ling-er seemed to have expected this. With a light tap of her foot, she landed on the arena. She smiled at Qin Feng and said, "You win." "Stupid girl, you." Qin Feng glared at Qiu Ling-er, feeling suffocated. He had been forced to use the Sky Tyrant Strike by a level 3 Origin Spirit Cultivator, but he had failed to kill his opponent. His opponent had even dodged it easily. Qiu Ling-er was playing him. This made Qin Feng feel a sense of humiliation. But Qiu Ling-er had already left the arena. Qin Feng could not attack again no matter how angry he was. "Miss Ling-er, are you alright?" Qiu Shan heaved a sigh of relief when he saw Qiu Ling-er land on the arena. "Uncle Qiu Shan, I'm fine." Qiu Ling-er smiled cutely and looked at Jean DeBeo. "Fatty, how strong am I? Can I protect you?" Jean DeBeo chuckled and said loudly, "Little sister Ling-er is too powerful. You're a heroine, a dragon among men. You played someone like a monkey. I, Jean DeBeo, have decided to follow little sister Ling-er from now on." "Fatty Jean, you called me a monkey?" Qin Feng glared at Jean DeBeo. Jean DeBeo glanced at Qin Feng and said innocently, "I was talking about someone. You like to think that way. I can't do anything about it." Qin Feng clenched his fists and his body trembled. The crowd below the stage roared with laughter, making Qin Feng even more ashamed. Nie Tian looked at Qiu Ling-er and thought, Qiu Ling-er is indeed very intelligent. That snake dance was very agile. It's a pity that Qin Feng is too strong. If he was at the same level as Qiu Ling-er, the outcome of this battle would be uncertain. It had to be said that Qiu Ling-er's performance had exceeded Nie Tian's expectations. He could see that Qiu Ling-er could protect herself, but it wasn't easy for her to force Qin Feng to use such a vicious move. Moreover, this girl knew when to advance and when to retreat, which was very rare. Qiu Ling-er's performance also attracted the attention of Fan Jinwu and the others on the high platform. They also did not think that a puny little 3rd-level Origin Spirit martial artist could actually toy around with the 9th-level Origin Spirit Strength Qin Feng. Next, the martial gathering continued. The opponents that Nie Tian encountered were all martial artists below 9th-level Origin Spirit Realm. These opponents, regardless of their strength, were all blasted off the fighting ring by Nie Tian with a single punch. Nie Tian is so strong. His opponents were all defeated in one move, and his feet never moved a single step. It's too scary. Someone in the crowd realized that once Nie Tian stepped onto the stage, he would not move again until his opponent was defeated. It's not that he's too strong, it's that his opponent is too weak. If he were to encounter a powerhouse like Qin Feng, the outcome of the battle might not be certain. Although Nie Tian and Qin Feng were in the same group, they had never met. This should have been specially arranged by the Blue Tyrant Academy. Each group would have 2 victors. If they let Nie Tian and Qin Feng meet prematurely, the subsequent top 8 battles would have much less to look at. The first group was the first to end the preliminaries. The final 2 victors were Nie Tian and Qin Feng. Nie Tian, count yourself lucky that you didn't meet this young master. But in the finals your luck won't be so good. Qin Feng stepped off the stage and looked at Nie Tian as he said provocatively. Nie Tian shot a calm glance at the other party and said indifferently, "The lucky one is you." Although Qin Feng was strong, it was not enough to make Nie Tian apprehensive. If he met him prematurely, even without using star souls, Nie Tian also had full confidence in defeating him. We'll wait and see. With a cold laugh, Qin Feng turned and left. The other three groups had their results one after another. The second group's Liang Yunlong was domineering all the way, attacking brutally. Those who fought with him either directly admitted defeat or died on the stage. Advancing together with Liang Yunlong was a youth called Zhang Wan, 8th level origin spirit strength. The third group was the group that Lan Binji was in. Lan Binji practically did not make a move. His opponents all admitted defeat. Even if there were people who were unconvinced and wanted to fight, they were all instantly defeated by Lan Binji in one move. From start to end, Lan Binji never used his primordial spirit. So Nie Tian still did not know what his primordial spirit was. The other student in the third group who advanced was a young lady, Su Haojie, 8th level origin spirit strength. The two people in the fourth group who advanced were Ling Tian and Yu Feiyang. Ling Tian was the same as Qin Feng and Liang Yunlong, both 9th level origin spirit strength. But Nie Tian could sense that Ling Tian's strength seemed to be stronger than Qin Feng and Liang Yunlong. Ling Tian was born a commoner. He was only 15 years old and already had 9th level origin spirit strength. It was sufficient to show the height of this person's martial talent. Rich kids like Lan Binji, Qin Feng, and Liang Yunlong had eaten God knows how many spirit pills and expended countless essence crystals since they were young. Adding on that their talent was not bad, it was very normal for them to have some strength. But Ling Tian was born a commoner and was extremely lacking in cultivation resources. To be able to have 9th level origin spirit strength, he relied on his outstanding talent. Among the top 8, apart from Lan Binji, the one Nie Tian did not want to encounter the most was Ling Tian. The final top 8 names were officially determined. Nie Tian, Qin Feng, Liang Yunlong, Zhang Wan, Lan Binji, Su Haojie, Ling Tian, Yu Feiyang. Among the top 8, Nie Tian was 4th level origin spirit strength. Zhang Wan, Su Haojie, and Yu Feiyang were 8th level origin spirit. Qin Feng, Liang Yunlong, and Ling Tian were 9th level origin spirit. Lan Binji was 1st level Wanxiang. At this moment, the crowd started discussing softly. Although most people knew that the newcomer king was none other than Lan Binji, the strength of Nie Tian, Ling Tian, and the rest were not weak either. They absolutely would not admit defeat directly. This was especially true for Nie Tian. With the bet between Qin Yuhu and Jean de Bao, it was even more impossible for him to admit defeat. It was extremely likely that he would give it his all. Nie Tian's appearance made the battles of the top 8 even more interesting to watch. On the high platform, Fan Jinwu, Qin Yetian, Zhang Yifeng, and the rest also had bright eyes, each deep in thought. Vice President Fan, in your opinion, who is the most likely to take the title of newcomer king among the top 8? Qin Yetian finally could not help but ask, his gaze lingering on Nie Tian, intentionally or otherwise. He kept having the feeling that Nie Tian would be the biggest surprise in the battles of the top 8. Commander Qin, you already know the answer to this question in your heart. Why ask me? Fan Jinwu chuckled, but still said, Prince Binji is the only Wanxiang martial practitioner among the top 8. Although Nie Tian, Ling Tian, and the rest have some strength, the gap between the origin spirit realm and the Wanxiang realm is too great. It is not something they can overcome. Therefore, I predict that the newcomer king will be none other than Prince Binji. Qin Yetian got the answer he wanted, smiled faintly, and said, Prince Binji is only 14 years old, but he is already a Wanxiang martial practitioner. His martial talent is indeed shocking. At this time, Zhang Yifeng, who had been silent all this time, suddenly laughed coldly and said, Are you two really that confident in Prince Binji? I don't think so. Zhang Yifeng seemed to be answering his own question. How could he not understand? If Qin Yetian was truly confident in Lan Binji, why would he bother asking Fan Jinwu? Qin Yetian let out a surprised sound and said, "Does Master Zhang have a different opinion?" Chapter 83. Hearing Zhang Yifeng's words, Fan Jinwu and Qin Yetian looked at each other, seemingly deep in thought. Although they hated Nie Tian to the core, Fan Jinwu and Qin Yetian couldn't ignore Nie Tian's terrifying strength. Qin Yetian's son, Qin Yuhu, had once been defeated by Nie Tian, and Qin Yuhu was at the first tier of the All-Adept realm. Although his battle prowess was slightly weaker than Lan Bingji's, it wasn't by much. Therefore, Qin Yetian really didn't know what to do. He couldn't guarantee that nothing unexpected would happen in this newcomer king battle. Nie Tian, you better lose to Prince Bingji. Otherwise, you'll be forcing me to make a move, Qin Yetian said viciously as he looked at Nie Tian from afar. If something unexpected happened in the battle between Nie Tian and Lan Bingji, Qin Yetian would definitely make a move. Soon, the arena quieted down. A gray-robed figure leaped onto the largest arena. The battle for the top 8 would be held on the largest arena. The gray-robed figure's body shook, and an enormous aura enveloped the surrounding tens of meters. My name is Aionmin. I'll be the judge for the upcoming battle. Aionmin's gaze swept across the arena, and the entire arena felt a faint pressure. What a powerful aura! This person's strength is actually at the 9th tier of the All-Adept realm. Nie Tian looked at Aionmin and exclaimed inwardly. Tyrant Cloud Academy really did have some foundation. Even a judge was at the 9th tier of the All-Adept realm. After intimidating the crowd, Aionmin announced in a loud voice, "First battle, Nie Tian vs. Liang Yunlong." Hearing his opponent, Nie Tian lifted his head slightly and looked in Liang Yunlong's direction. At the same time, Liang Yunlong turned around, his gaze locked onto Nie Tian. The two of them did not say anything, but the anger between them was completely revealed. This battle wasn't a sparring match, but a battle to the death. Jean Debao stood next to Nie Tian and reminded him, "Boss, Liang Yunlong is vicious and merciless. You mustn't show him any mercy. You mustn't be soft-hearted." Nie Tian had displayed terrifying strength in the martial meet, but he did not kill, and did not even injure his opponent. Jean Debao was afraid that he would be too lenient and suffer a loss against Liang Yunlong. "Don't worry, I know what I'm doing," Nie Tian replied with a calm expression as he slowly stepped onto the arena. He was not a cruel and bloodthirsty person, but he was definitely not a soft-hearted and weak person. There was no need for him to kill others, but against Liang Yunlong, he would show no mercy. Liang Yunlong was a cruel and ruthless person. He was not a kind person. Leaving such a person alive would be a disaster. At this moment, Liang Yunlong also stepped onto the martial arena and faced Nie Tian head-on. The duel between the two attracted the attention of everyone present. Qiu Ling looked at Nie Tian with worry on her delicate face. She murmured softly, "Will Big Brother Nie Tian be a match for this guy? There should be no problem, unless Liang Yunlong is even more terrifying than an all-creation martial artist." Qiu Shan nodded. "I believe that Big Brother Nie Tian will definitely win." Nie Yuro had full confidence in Nie Tian. In her heart there was no one that Nie Tian could not defeat. Little Guai opened its eyes at this moment and let out a strange cry, as if responding to Nie Yuro. And its voice was actually 70% human. Little Guai cried out once and went back to sleep, so no one paid it any attention. On the other side, Lan Bingji also focused his gaze on the martial arena. He thought to himself, Liang Yunlong is very strong. It's a good opportunity to test out Nie Tian's depth. This prince wants to see how a trash at the 4th level of the Origin Spirit Realm can compete with this prince for the newcomer king. Nie Tian, since you are the teacher that Zhang Yifeng has acknowledged, you should bring this prince a surprise. At the same time, Lan Bingchen also looked at Nie Tian from afar with a complicated expression. Although he had heard of Nie Tian's deeds, Lan Bingchen still could not be at ease without seeing his true strength. and the opponents that Nie Tian had met before were all not worth mentioning. They could not be compared to Liang Yunlong at all. After all, Liang Yunlong was a 9th level of the Origin Spirit Realm martial artist. He was vicious and very ferocious. Nie Tian, you've finally arrived. Liang Yunlong's expression was frighteningly gloomy, his killing intent surging. You really want to kill me? Nie Tian frowned slightly. Liang Yunlong smiled savagely and said coldly, Not really, but I really want to torture you to death. He purposely emphasized the word torture, so that it could stimulate his fighting spirit even more. Then let's do it. Not wanting to waste any more words, Nie Tian's energy meridians started to circulate. Liang Yunlong was even more impatient. A black heavy sword appeared behind him. The sword was surrounded by a turbid black aura, emitting a heart-palpitating aura. The black dragon sword was Liang Yunlong's primordial spirit. Previously, he used the black dragon sword primordial spirit to torture and kill quite a few opponents. Black dragon furious roar. Liang Yunlong mustered up all the energy in his body. The aura of his entire body surged as he suddenly erupted with a furious roar. The next instant, his body leaned forward and stomped down fiercely. A deep pit was actually stomped out on the arena. A howl erupted from the black dragon sword's blade. Shortly after, it emitted a strange dark light. A black dragon shadow gushed out. Black dragon furious sword. Seeing this scene, Fan Jinwu's expression changed slightly. Black dragon furious sword. This was the Liang family's high-grade yellow-tier martial technique. Looking at Liang Yunlong's aura, he had clearly already cultivated the Black Dragon Furious Sword to the peak level. The levels of martial artists cultivating martial techniques were entry, minor success, major success, peak. Normally speaking, entry in a month, minor success in a year, major success in 3 years, and peak in 10 years. But there were also differences in martial technique levels and martial talent. Liang Yunlong was only 15 or 16 years old. It was clearly impossible for him to cultivate the Black Dragon Furious Sword for 10 years. At most, it was just a few years. To be able to cultivate the Black Dragon Furious Sword to the peak level, it was enough to show that his martial talent far surpassed ordinary people. Nie Tian stood on the spot, feeling Liang Yunlong's aura. His expression was terrifyingly calm. Suddenly, all the energy meridians in his body began to circulate, including the 10th energy meridian formed from the origin star stone. Every inch of his muscles and every piece of his bones was filled with terrifying energy. The 9 extremities war god art circulated rapidly. A faint golden glow emitted from Nie Tian's body, making him look like an enraged wild beast. Kill! Nie Tian roared and punched out with the divine war emperor fist. In the next instant, Nie Tian stomped on the ground and charged forward like a bolt of lightning. Not using his energy to attack? Everyone was dumbfounded by this scene. None of them had expected that Nie Tian would launch such a direct attack without using his soul power. Not to mention, he even charged at him head-on. This was an extremely dangerous move. A martial artist who used their energy and didn't use their energy were on completely different levels. Nie Tian naturally knew this. The reason why he dared to do this was because he had absolute confidence in himself. Moreover, his energy did not have much combat power, at least not now. Boom! The black dragon shadow collided with Nie Tian and shattered. Bang! Then, a muffled sound rang out. Nie Tian's fist landed on Liang Yunlong's chest, and the sound of bones cracking echoed in the air. Liang Yunlong flew backward and crashed heavily below the arena. Chapter 84. Unable to withstand a single blow. It wasn't until Nie Tian's voice rang out that everyone reacted. The battle between Liang Yunlong and Nie Tian was originally a highly anticipated battle. However, no one expected that the battle would end in just one move. Both of them were too ruthless. They fought head-on without any leeway. Liang Yunlong's Black Dragon Roar was an all-out attack. His frontal attack definitely exceeded 15,000 Jin. On the other hand, Nie Tian directly used his body to resist. He didn't even use his primordial spirit and actually blasted Liang Yunlong off the stage. All of this was too strange. After all, there was an entire 5 small realms between the two of them. No one knew how Nie Tian had done it. Only a few of the more powerful people on the platform had figured out what had happened. Fan Jinwu had an astonished look as he said, "The Liang family's boy has 9th level origin spirit strength and also cultivated the Black Dragon Furious sword to the pinnacle level. He's still unable to block the power of Nie Tian's one punch. Could it be that his fist is even more terrifying than the sword spirit? This kid's body is a little strange." Qin Yetian recovered from the shock and said with a trembling voice. Only Zhang Yifeng stared blankly at Nie Tian, unable to react. At this time, Zhang Yifeng suddenly realized that acknowledging Nie Tian as his master was simply too wise. From this moment on, Zhang Yifeng firmly believed that Nie Tian was his teacher. Seeing that Kushochin was still in a daze, Qin Yetian wanted to say something, but decided against it. After all, Zhang Yifeng was on Nie Tian's side. Fan Jinwu calmed down and guessed, "This brat is indeed a little strange. If I am not wrong, he should be cultivating a high-grade martial technique. That was why his body was so strong. Moreover, the martial skill he used in that punch just now was also very strange. It seemed to be a very high-level martial skill. At the very least, it's above profound rank. It might even be an earth rank martial skill." Fan Jinwu's guess was right. The reason why Nie Tian was able to heavily injure Liang Yunlong with a single punch was not only because of his powerful physical strength, but also because of the 9 extremities War God Art and the War God Imperial Fist. Earth-ranked martial technique. Qin Yetian was astonished. Martial arts techniques were divided into 4 ranks: Heaven, Earth, Mysterious, and Yellow. An Earth-ranked martial technique was not of a high rank. But in the Blue Cloud Empire, Earth-rank martial techniques were heaven-defying. In the entire Blue Cloud Empire, the highest martial technique was only at the mid-level of the profound rank. As for the Earth-ranked martial arts above the profound ranked, only the large sects and clans of first-rate empires could possess them. As for Nie Tian, he was just a country bumpkin who came from a poor mountain valley. Where did he get an Earth-rank martial technique from? Could it be that there's some force behind him? A layer of bewilderment appeared in Qin Yetian's heart, and his expression couldn't help but turn gloomy when he thought of the matter of Zhang Yifeng taking Nie Tian as his master. He intentionally or unintentionally looked at Zhang Yifeng as he wanted to find a trace of clues from the latter's face. Fan Jinwu also thought of this possibility and looked at Zhang Yifeng suspiciously. Zhang Yifeng's lips curled into a smile. His expression was calm, making it impossible to tell what he was thinking. At this time, Nie Tian walked down the stage and arrived beside Liang Yunlong. Liang Yunlong, who was lying on the ground, had his chest caved in. His injuries were severe, and it seemed like he would die at any moment. However, his eyes were staring at Nie Tian from beginning to end, and they were extremely vicious and unwilling. Nie. Liang Yunlong opened his mouth slightly. His breathing was weak, but one of his hands was shakily stretched out. Just as Liang Yunlong opened his palm, Nie Tian suddenly smelled a familiar scent. He frowned slightly and raised his arm. A formless energy swept past, and a spirit pill landed in his hand. Explosive Yuan pill. Looking at the spirit pill in his hand, Nie Tian's heart sank slightly. The spirit pill that he snatched from Liang Yunlong's hand was the explosive Yuan pill. Judging from the aura, it seemed to be a rank 3 explosive Yuan pill. Explosive Yuan pill, Nie Tian couldn't be more familiar with it. The first spirit pill that he refined in this life was the explosive Yuan pill. Explosive Yuan pill was divided into different ranks, and the one in Nie Tian's hand was a rank 3 explosive Yuan pill. Its medicinal power was several times stronger than the rank 2 explosive yuan pill that Nie Tian refined previously. If the rank 3 explosive yuan pill was used on Liang Yunlong, it would definitely allow his strength to instantly reach the manifestation realm. This was definitely prepared by Liang Yunlong in advance, just in case. Luckily, Nie Tian was ruthless enough. With one move, Liang Yunlong didn't even have the chance to use the explosive yuan pill. Liang Yunlong's expression was in pain. He stretched out his hand and wanted to snatch the explosive yuan pill back. One had to admit that this person's desire for victory was very strong. In this kind of situation, he still wanted to use the explosive yuan pill. Nie Tian didn't even look at him and said coldly, "Your explosive yuan pill, I will accept it." The spectators were stunned for a moment, but no one dared to stand out and object. Even the judge on the stage, Ai only frowned slightly and didn't interfere. At this moment, 2 Liang family martial artists appeared and lifted Liang Yunlong up. They didn't dare to ask for the explosive yuan pill from Nie Tian. Looking at Liang Yunlong being carried away, Nie Tian felt a little regretful. This time, he didn't kill Liang Yunlong. In the future, he would have another troublesome enemy. Although Liang Yunlong's injuries were severe, his strength wasn't bad. If he consumed spiritual pills, it wouldn't take long for him to recover. After the Liang family left, Qiu Shan and the rest came over. "Boss, you're too awesome." Jean de Bao swallowed his saliva, his face full of shock. "Hee, I already knew that big brother Nie Tian would win," Nie Yuro said proudly. Qiu Shan, Qiu Linger and the rest looked at Nie Tian in a daze. They didn't expect Nie Tian to defeat Liang Yunlong in a single move. Nie Tian smiled faintly and kept the explosive yuan pill. After defeating Liang Yunlong, his biggest reward was the explosive yuan pill. With the explosive yuan pill, he had another trump card. From afar, Lan Binji looked at Nie Tian, his face so dark that it looked like it was about to drip blood. Lan Bingchen, on the other hand, was very happy. He thought to himself, "Nie Tian, you really didn't let me down." Then, the battle of the top 8 continued. Second match, Prince Binji battle Zhang Wan. Ai Anmin looked at the crowd, and when everyone quietened down, he announced loudly. Lan Binji stepped onto the stage. He was obviously impatient. Ever since he joined the freshman martial gathering, all the opponents he met either admitted defeat or couldn't even withstand a single blow, not giving Lan Binji a chance to fight. Now that he was facing Zhang Wan, he wanted to amaze everyone. Zhang Wan stood below the stage, raised his head and looked at Lan Binji, cupped his hands and said, "Prince Binji, I admit..." "No!" Before he could say the word admit defeat, Lan Binji's face turned cold and interrupted Zhang Wan. Zhang Wan wanted to directly admit defeat, but unfortunately, Lan Binji didn't allow him to do so. Zhang Wan looked at Ai Anmin helplessly. How can there be such a shameless person who doesn't allow people to admit defeat? Ai Anmin turned his head, as if he didn't hear Lan Binji's words at all. Lan Binji took a step forward and said in a deep voice, "Zhang Wan, listen carefully, I won't allow you to admit defeat." Lan Binji's voice was very low, but those who were close to him could still hear it clearly. Nie Tian's mental power was strong, and he heard it as well. He couldn't help but frown. Lan Binji is too domineering to actually not allow others to admit defeat. Chapter 85. Zhang Wan, you are unlucky. You will be the first sacrifice on my road to becoming the newcomer king. Lan Binji glanced at Zhang Wan and made up his mind. He would kill Zhang Wan in the most shocking way possible. He had forced Zhang Wan onto the stage so he could kill him. Nie Tian had taken all the limelight in the freshman martial gathering. Even though Lan Binji was a prince, he did not receive much attention. He needed to be the center of attention. He had to let everyone know of his existence. He had to create a sensation. Zhang Wan was going to be a poor sacrifice for him. Your Highness, Zhang Wan suddenly felt the murderous intent in Lan Bingyi's eyes. His heart jumped and he quickly spoke. But before he could finish, he heard Lan Bingyi yell, "Too late!" As he shouted, a ball of turbid liquid appeared behind Lan Bingyi. It was cold and it emitted a freezing aura. The temperature around suddenly dropped by dozens of degrees, and it suddenly became bone-chilling. "Black water freeze!" Lan Bingyi screamed, and the turbid liquid behind him gushed out, blasting towards Zhang Wan. Zhang Wan wanted to react, but it was too late. The turbid liquid swept past, and Zhang Wan's entire body was covered in a thin layer of ice crystals. He was frozen, and his entire body became an ice sculpture. His face was still in shock. "Die!" Lan Bingyi suddenly took a step forward and kicked Zhang Quan's abdomen. Pang! Zhang Wan flew out, and he shattered into countless pieces of ice in the air. When he landed, he turned into ice. Until he died, Zhang Wan's entire body was frozen solid. Even his blood was frozen. Everything happened in the blink of an eye, and no one could react. By the time everyone was able to react, Zhang Quan had already turned into a pile of ice. It was too weird. Everyone looked at the ice on the ground, and their eyes were filled with fear. "Boss, what is going on?" After a while, Jean de Bao reacted and asked. Nie Tian looked at Lan Bingyi and said, "His spirit is a spirit, and it seems to have the ability to freeze. Zhang Wan only has the power of the 8th tier of origin spirit. In front of him, there is no chance of survival." "Spirit!" Jean de Bao screamed. He did not expect Lan Bingyi's spirit to be a spirit. For a martial artist's origin spirit, the three most traditional types were the beast spirit, wood spirit, and weapon spirit. Aside from these three, there were also spirits, dead spirits, ghosts, and other extremely rare original spirit. Nie Tian's spirit was the Chaos Original Coffin and the Star Soul Cannon. It was a spirit too. Otherworldly spiritual warriors were extremely rare. Once they matured, they would be extremely terrifying. Take the current Lan Bingyi for example. Although he was only at the first tier of the Wanxiang level, his true battle prowess was comparable to that of a 4th-tier Wanxiang martial artist. Nie Tian was right. Lan Bingyi's spirit was a spirit, Blackwater Mystic Ice. The Blackwater Mysterious Ice Elemental Spirit's normal state was a ball of turbid liquid. Once it was infused with elemental energy, it could turn into ice or mist, which was very strange. When the crowd heard Nie Tian's words, there was an uproar. "Spirit? Ice Knight Prince's spirit is a spirit? That's scary." This year's Rookie King is none other than Prince Bingyi. Prince Bingyi is very strong, but to kill people in such a manner is too cruel. Zhang Wan was forced into the arena by Prince Bingyi. Prince Bingyi is too arrogant. He doesn't have the demeanor of a prince. Everyone admitted that Prince Bingyi's strength was terrifying, but they were very dissatisfied with his actions. Hearing these discussions, Lan Bingyi was not angry. Instead, he was very pleased. To him, strength was the most important thing. Reputation and reputation were all bullsh*t. But Lan Bingchen, who was hidden in the crowd, was very happy. He laughed to himself. "My dear little brother, continue to be arrogant. One day, you will learn that reputation is very important. Who would want a homicidal maniac to be the king?" The more arrogant Lan Bingyi was, the happier Lan Bingchen was. He was a few years older than Lan Bingyi, and understood some things better. To be an emperor, one needed more than just strength. More importantly, one needed the support of various factions. Based on Lan Bingyi's behavior today, the Alchemist Guild, as well as the other sects and clans, would definitely be very disgusted. How could they be at ease letting a homicidal maniac become the king? On the viewing platform, Fan Jinwu's expression was slightly ugly. Looking at Qin Yetian, he said, "Commander Qin, this old man admits that Prince Bingyi's strength and talent are very strong. But this action of his is not appropriate." Fan Jinwu had seen all of Lan Bingyi's actions, including him forcing Zhang Wan onto the arena. However, out of respect for the imperial family, he could only turn a blind eye to it. What he did not expect was that Lan Binji actually killed Zhang Wan, and in such a cruel manner. This was something he could not accept. Commander Qin, Prince Binji has angered the masses. I'm afraid it will not be good for the royal family, Zhang Yifeng said. Qin Yetian's expression was a little awkward. You two are right. His Highness Binji's actions are indeed ungraceful. When this one returns, I will definitely report this to His Majesty the Emperor and request for His Majesty to discipline Prince Binji. Actually, even without Fan Jinwu and Zhang Yifeng's words, Qin Yetian knew that Lan Binji's actions were stupid. This was simply smearing the royal family's face. Although the royal family did not care about the lives of these commoners, they still had to go through the motions. A prince had forced someone onto the arena and killed him in such a cruel manner. If this matter were to spread, the royal family's reputation would be greatly damaged. Binji, you are still too young. Even if you are angry, you should not choose to vent your anger in such a manner. Qin Yetian sighed. After all, Lan Binji was his nephew. He naturally hoped that Lan Binji would be the future emperor. This would be very beneficial to the Qin family. But Lan Binji did not care about this. He strode down the arena and walked in the direction of Nie Tian. When he was a few meters away from Nie Tian, he stopped and said cold, Nie Tian, you better be prepared to die for trying to snatch the rookie king from me. With that, Lan Binji laughed and turned to leave. From start to finish, Nie Tian did not say a word. He only looked at Lan Binji as if he was an idiot. In Nie Tian's eyes, Lan Binji was a complete idiot. As a prince, he had killed someone in public. If he was not an idiot, then what was he? But Nie Tian had to admit that Lan Binji was indeed very strong. Especially his Blackwater Ice origin spirit, which was extremely strange and domineering. To be honest, Nie Tian did not have much confidence in going against the Blackwater Ice origin spirit. Boss, why don't we surrender? We don't want the first-rank residents anymore. Jean de Bao looked at Lan Binji with a frightened expression and whispered to Nie Tian. Nie Tian smiled faintly, his expression calm. Do I look like someone who would surrender? Jean de Bao was taken aback. Then, with a serious expression, he shook his head. Nope. Then it's settled. Nie Tian smiled faintly. Chapter 86. There was not much suspense in the battle between Qin Feng and Yu Feiyang. With just one move, Yu Feiyang was blasted off the stage by Qin Feng. Qin Feng's primordial spirit was the Tyrant Sky Hammer. It was overbearing, surging, and abnormally powerful. Next, it was Ling Tian and Su Haojie's showdown. Su Haojie was the only female among the top 8, her strength at the 8th level origin spirit realm. There was no suspense in the duel between the two, but the process of the duel was very exciting. Most of them could tell that Ling Tian was intentionally letting them win. After a dozen moves, Su Haojie took the initiative to admit defeat. This match was the most entertaining to watch, but it was also the plainest of the top 8 matches. After this battle, Nie Tian was even more certain that Ling Tian was an opponent worthy of his attention. This was because Ling Tian had not used his origin soul from the beginning to the end. Up until now, Nie Tian still did not know what Ling Tian's origin soul was. After a short rest, Ai Anmin once again stepped onto the martial stage. His gaze swept across the audience, and he said in a loud voice, "The top 4 of the freshman martial meet have been decided. They are Prince of Ice Knight Qin Feng, Nie Tian, and Ling Tian." Every time a name was mentioned, there would be a cry of surprise. Those who were able to make it to the semi-finals of Tyrant Cloud Academy's freshman martial meet were all martial arts geniuses. Ai Anmin waved his hand and announced, "New student martial gathering, top 4 battles, first battle, Prince of Bingyi against Ling Tian. Prince of the Frozen Night." The entire place was in an uproar, all of them talking about Lan Binji. Lan Binji's method of killing Zhang Wan was too brutal. Thinking about it now, it still made one's heart palpitate. On the other hand, Ling Tian's entire journey had been smooth sailing, and he did not meet any strong opponents. Thus, he did not have an eye-catching performance. Do you guys think Ling Tian will just admit defeat? I think so. The Ice Knight Prince is way too strong. Whoever fights against him will definitely turn into ice dregs. Just wait, Ling Tian will definitely admit defeat. Hearing the whispers of the crowd, Nie Tian just shook his head and smiled. He was not worried that Ling Tian would admit defeat. He had seen the determination in Ling Tian's eyes. This kind of person would definitely not admit defeat. No matter who the opponent was, if you chose to admit defeat, then you would be letting your martial Dao heart be covered in dust. If one's martial heart was covered in dust, it would be a considerable obstacle to the martial artist's path of the martial Dao. It might even become a martial artist's martial heart demon. Therefore, martial artists with a firm heart of martial arts all understood a principle. No matter what enemy they faced, they absolutely could not admit defeat. Losing 100 times wasn't scary. What was scary was admitting defeat. Lan Binji was the first to ascend the arena. His gaze was piercingly cold and disdainful, and his entire body revealed a type of condescending arrogance. In the next moment, Ling Tian's figure appeared, and under the gazes of disbelief, he resolutely stepped onto the stage. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief when they saw Ling Tian step onto the arena. These people wanted Ling Tian to ascend the stage and wanted to see him die in the hands of Lan Binji. Lan Binji had a sinister look on his face as he said, "Ling Tian, you're very courageous. You actually didn't choose to admit defeat. This prince is a little interested in you." "It's a pity that I'm not interested in you." Ling Tian raised his head slightly and replied coldly. Lan Binji was startled, then he smiled and said, "Very good, there's finally someone who dares to challenge this prince. This year's freshman martial meet is really getting more and more interesting." Other than Ye Tian, Ling Tian was the first person who dared to speak to Lan Binji in such a manner. Ling Tian obviously didn't want to continue talking nonsense with Lan Binji. His entire body's spirit energy surged as he prepared to attack. "Humph." The corner of Lan Binji's mouth curled up as the black water mysterious ice yuan spirit appeared. The black liquid enveloped its entire body like a demon god, emitting a cold, killing intent. Black water ice seal. Using the same move, a ball of black chi enveloped over and attacked Ling Tian. Everyone's hearts trembled as they recalled the scene of Zhang Wan being sealed in ice. Ling Tian quickly retreated a few steps. He knew that his strength wasn't as good as Lan Binji's and didn't want to face him head-on. Blazing flame impact. With a step, Ling Tian's figure leapt up high. A flaming ancient halberd appeared in Ling Tian's hand, and a wave of raging flames rushed down, dispersing the black chi in front of him. The ancient halberd in Ling Tian's hand released a scarlet flame. His spirit energy surged violently, almost causing the ancient halberd to solidify. Seeing this scene, Nie Tian smiled and said, "The blazing ancient halberd is a fire attribute weapon spirit. It happens to be the bane of the black water mysterious ice yuan spirit." The ancient halberd was Ling Tian's yuan spirit. Ice and fire mutually countered each other. The black water mysterious ice yuan spirit and the blazing ancient halberd yuan spirit were natural enemies. Lan Binji was slightly surprised that the black water ice seal was broken, but he reacted quickly. The black water mysterious ice spun in the air and turned into a mysterious ice-sharp sword in Lan Binji's hand. "This prince wants to see whether your blazing ancient halberd or this prince's mysterious ice-sharp sword is stronger." Lan Binji smiled coldly, his killing intent surging. The black water mysterious ice turned into a mysterious ice-sharp sword, causing the surrounding temperature to drop by tens of degrees. Everyone felt a bone-chilling cold. Ling Tian landed on the ground, his entire body covered in flames. His expression was firm, calm, and fearless. Mysterious ice-sharp blade. Lon Binji shouted. The mysterious ice-sharp sword shot out several ice blades that pierced through the air. Blazing flame shield. Ling Tian waved the blazing ancient halberd, forming a fire shield on the tip of the flame, blocking the ice blades. The black water mysterious ice was too strong. If the mysterious ice got close, even Ling Tian would be frozen into an ice cube. Everyone was dumbfounded. No one would have thought that Ling Tian, who was born as a commoner, would have such heaven-defying strength. He was actually on par with Prince Bingyi. On the high platform, a few important figures also looked over. Dean Fan, what do you think of this Ling Tian? Qin Yetian couldn't help but ask. Fan Jinwu smiled and said, Ling Tian's martial talent is not bad. Unfortunately, he only has the strength of the 9th level of the origin spirit realm. The blazing ancient halberd Yuan spirit hasn't formed a solid body, so he can't fight against Prince Bing Ye's black water mysterious ice Yuan spirit. If this old man isn't wrong, Ling Tian will lose within 3 moves. Qin Yetian nodded his head in satisfaction. He could obviously see that Ling Tian was purely using spirit energy to protect his body, not letting the black water mysterious ice get close. If this continued, his spirit energy would be quickly used up, and he would lose without a doubt. Nie Tian looked at the battle on the arena and was slightly moved. If Ling Tian's strength reached the manifestation realm, he would be able to fight Lon Binji. But right now, he was still too weak. Ling Tian, I didn't expect you to be so strong. Looks like this prince has underestimated you. But you still have to die today. If you don't die, how can this prince rest in peace? Ling Tian roared arrogantly, the killing intent on his body almost condensing into a solid body, giving people a suffocating feeling. Ling Tian's blazing ancient halberd Yuan spirit was practically the nemesis of the black water mysterious ice Yuan spirit. Plus, Ling Tian's strength and talent were both not bad. Lon Binji definitely wouldn't let someone who was a threat to him live. Ling Tian panted heavily. His spirit energy was already in a state of exhaustion. He had to fight on one side and protect himself with pure spirit energy at the same time to prevent being frozen by the black water mysterious ice. His spirit energy consumption was too great. Chapter 87. Noticing the calmness in Ling Tian's eyes, Lon Binji's heart couldn't help but tremble. Could it be that he still has a trump card that can overturn the heavens? Thinking of this, Lon Binji couldn't help but be more cautious. Ling Tian let out a cold laugh as he thought to himself, Lon Binji, since you have forced me to this step, I have no choice but to use that move. At this moment, Ling Tian suddenly looked at Nie Tian with a weird expression. Nie Tian saw him as a strong opponent, but how could he not know Nie Tian's strength? That move was originally reserved for Nie Tian, but now it seemed that he could only use it in advance. Ling Tian suddenly kept the flaming ancient halberd and sat down cross-legged. Lon Binji looked at Ling Tian suspiciously, not knowing what the latter wanted to do. The people below the stage were also stunned for a moment. In the next moment, Ling Tian's body floated up into the air, emitting a faint glow. Layer by layer, it was as though a lotus was blooming. This is... On the stage, Zhang Yifeng stood up abruptly. Looking at Ling Tian, his expression changed greatly. Fan Jinwu and Qin Yetian looked at each other and said at the same time, Master Zhang, what happened? Zhang Yifeng was the calmest of the three. Something must have happened for him to suddenly stand up. He's a spiritual body of heaven and earth. Zhang Yifeng calmed himself down and pointed at Ling Tian. Spiritual body of heaven and earth. Fan Jinwu and Qin Yetian exclaimed at the same time. Spiritual body of heaven and earth. Of course, they knew how terrifying the spiritual bodies of heaven and earth were. When a martial artist cultivates, they mainly cultivate their martial body and origin spirit. If one wanted to possess a powerful martial body, they would have to go through a long and arduous process of cultivation. However, there was an extremely small number of people who were born with powerful martial bodies. Their physiques far surpassed ordinary martial artists. This kind of martial artist was called the spiritual body of heaven and earth. The spiritual body of heaven and earth was not only much stronger than a martial body of the same level, but the most horrifying thing was that when the spiritual body grew to a certain extent, it could stimulate the innate magical abilities. Innate supernatural powers were more suitable for a martial artist than any other martial skill. Once it was used, its power would be abnormally terrifying. A martial artist with a heaven and earth spirit body had a strong martial body, and their cultivation speed far surpassed that of an ordinary martial artist. Their martial arts achievements were usually not low. However, spiritual bodies of heaven and earth were extremely rare, less than 1 in a million. This was why Fan Jinwu and Qin Yetian were so shocked when they heard Zhang Yifeng say that Ling Tian was a spiritual body of heaven and earth. Master Zhang, can you tell what grade Ling Tian's spiritual body is? Qin Yetian seemed to have thought of something and asked with a hint of panic in his voice. The spiritual body of heaven and earth was the same as the martial arts and martial skills. It was divided into 4 grades: heaven, earth, profound, yellow, low, medium, and high. Low yellow rank was the lowest rank, while high heaven rank was the highest. Zhang Yifeng narrowed his eyes and said, "Based on my deduction, Ling Tian's spirit body should be a low-grade yellow-grade spirit body. Low level of the yellow class." Qin Yetian let out a sigh of relief. Ling Tian's spiritual body was the lowest grade of the yellow grade, so it shouldn't pose much of a threat to Lan Binji. If his spiritual body was of a higher level, Lan Binji would be in grave danger. But even then, Qin Yetian still maintained a high degree of nervousness. If anything unexpected were to happen on the arena, he would definitely make a move. Even if Ling Tian was a spiritual body of heaven and earth, he could not be compared to Lan Binji. After all, the latter was a prince. On the arena, Ling Tian's figure rose to a height of 3 to 4 meters. His whole body was emitting a bright light. He looked like a saint descending to the world. The corner of Lan Binji's mouth curled up. He suddenly smiled and thought, "Ling Tian, you are very strong. Very good. I will use your life to prove to the world how strong this prince is." Whoosh! Lan Binji stabbed out with the profound ice sword in his hand. The sword's momentum became sharper and sharper. A cold sword light whizzed out and turned into 9 sword shadows in the sky. Crack, crack, crack! An ear-piercing sound could be heard. The air seemed to have frozen. 9 ice flowers appeared in the sky and pierced towards Ling Tian like sharp arrows. "Ling Tian, to be able to die under my mysterious ice 9 kills, you should be satisfied." Lan Binji smiled coldly in his heart. At this moment, Ling Tian's figure suddenly moved. Lotus Night Destruction. He suddenly stood up and slapped down with his palm. A bright light shot out. Zhang Yifeng did not see wrongly. Ling Tian's spiritual body of heaven and earth was indeed a low-grade yellow-grade spirit body, the Lotus spiritual body. The Lotus Night Destruction was one of the innate abilities of the Lotus spiritual body. At this moment, everyone held their breath. They did not dare to breathe too loudly. Everyone knew that victory and defeat would be decided in the next moment. Qin Yetian's expression was tense. The spiritual energy in his body surged. He was ready to make his move. Fan Jinwu and Zhang Yifeng looked at each other but did not say anything. On the other side, Lan Bingchen's eyes shot out a ray of light. His heart was in his throat. How he hoped to see Lan Binji die in Ling Tian's hands. Bang! In a soul-stirring moment, Lan Binji and Ling Tian's ultimate move clashed. An ear-piercing explosion was heard. In the next moment, Ling Tian's body sank. He was hit by the ice flowers and flew out 10 meters into the air. Bang! Ling Tian's body landed heavily on the ground, creating a deep pit. On the other hand, Lan Binji's face was gloomy. He stood on the stage without moving. Pfff! Ling Tian stood up. The clothes on his body were all torn apart. He could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. It was obvious that he was injured, and his injuries were extremely serious. I lost. Ling Tian spat out these few words with difficulty. He was a little absent-minded. Even with the spiritual body of heaven and earth, he still lost to Lan Binji. However, this did not mean that the spiritual lotus body was not powerful. It was just that Ling Tian's strength was too weak. He could not bring out the full potential of the spiritual lotus body. Not dead. Seeing that Ling Tian was still alive, Lan Binji's first reaction was not joy but shock and anger. Ling Tian was the primordial spirit of the blazing flame halberd. Coupled with the spiritual body of heaven and earth, his potential was limitless. If Lan Binji did not kill Ling Tian now, he would definitely be a huge threat in the future. Thinking about this, Lan Binji's face was filled with killing intent. Go to hell. Before anyone could react, Lan Binji suddenly attacked. An icicle pierced towards Ling Tian. No one expected Lan Binji to be so vicious. He actually attacked the already defeated Ling Tian. Ling Tian was currently in a daze from his defeat. His entire body was numb. How could he have any reaction? Just as the icicle was about to hit Ling Tian, an invisible force suddenly flew through the air. Bang! The icicle was shattered and turned into ice shards. Ling Tian reacted and looked at Nie Tian in shock. It was the latter who saved his life. B*****. You dare to save him? Lan Binji roared. He glared at Nie Tian cold. Nie Tian turned around and looked at Lan Binji. He said indifferently, Lan Binji, he has already lost. You still want to kill him? This is too much. Lan Binji was burning with anger. He shouted, This prince can do whatever I want. It is not up to you to teach me. As he said that, Lan Binji took a step forward and landed beside Nie Tian. They were less than 5 meters apart. Chapter 88. Everyone's attention shifted, subconsciously clearing out a space. No one dared to approach Nie Tian and Lan Binji. If these two were to fight, it would definitely be very intense. You dare save someone I want to kill? Lan Binji walked over step by step, getting closer and closer to Nie Tian. Nie Tian was not flustered, his expression indifferent as he said, An arrogant fool like you, if you weren't a prince, you would already be a corpse. Lan Binji was arrogant, despotic, if not for his status as a prince. He absolutely would not have lived to this day. Stinking brat, you're courting death. Lan Binji was enraged, his entire body emitting a cold intent, as if even the surrounding air was about to freeze. Nie Tian frowned slightly, saying cold, You still want to kill people? So what if I kill people? This prince will kill whoever I want. Lan Binji roared, suddenly attacking, several ice hammers stabbing out, heading straight for Nie Tian. Stupid. Nie Tian's brows furrowed, not dodging, punching out. Pung! With an explosive sound, a golden fist shadow directly smashed the icicles. Even so, that bone-piercing cold intent was like maggots, attacking along Nie Tian's arm. Immediately, half of his arm felt a chill, as if it was frozen. Nie Tian hurriedly circulated his spirit energy, shaking his arm, dispersing the cold intent. Lan Binji's Blackwater Profound Ice Origin Spirit was too tyrannical, just the cold intent was about to freeze Nie Tian's arm. If he was directly hit by the Blackwater Profound Ice, Nie Tian would definitely become an ice sculpture. Humph! Is that all you have? Lan Binji sneered, wanting to attack again. Impudent! At this time, a roar resounded. Immediately, a vast pressure swept over, everyone felt their chest tighten, as if they would suffocate in the next moment. Fan Jinwu stood on the high platform, his voice rumbling out, You two stop immediately, if you dare attack again, don't blame me for being merciless. Count yourself lucky. Lan Binji turned his head to look at Fan Jinwu, then turned and retreated. After all, Fan Jinwu was Blue Tyrant Academy's vice principal. His status was very high. Lan Binji did not dare to go against his words. Everyone, disperse. Fan Jinwu shouted coldly. The crowd immediately dispersed and kept quiet out of fear. Fan Jinwu sat down and glanced at Qin Yetian. Prince Binji has gone too far. For him to do this, does he put my Blue Tyrant Academy in his eyes? Qin Yetian smiled awkwardly and apologized profusely. Please calm down, Headmaster Fan. His Highness is young and insensible, please forgive him. Fan Jinwu no longer spoke. Zhang Yifeng had a teasing smile on his face as he spoke. Prince Binji is immature, but could it be that Governor Qin is the same? He actually made Dean Fan stand up and stop him. Lan Binji and Nie Tian fighting below the stage. This kind of thing happening in the freshman martial meet, if it were to spread out, it would inevitably damage Blue Tyrant Academy's prestige. Of course, Fan Jinwu didn't want to see such a thing. Out of respect for the royal family, he turned a blind eye. Unfortunately, Qin Yetian was blind and pretended to be dumb. He had no intention of stopping Lan Binji from causing trouble. Fan Jinwu had no choice but to stand up and stop him. Lan Binji had already broken the rules of the martial meet time and time again in the freshman martial meet. First, he forced Zhang Wan onto the stage and killed him. Then he wanted to kill the already defeated Ling Tian. Now he was fighting with Nie Tian below the stage. If he was allowed to continue messing around, Blue Tyrant Academy's dignity would be trampled until nothing was left. It's all this Qin's fault, please forgive me. Qin Yetian coughed twice and apologized awkwardly. Although he apologized verbally, Qin Yetian was very happy in his heart. The reason why he didn't stop Lan Binji was because he felt that offending Lan Binji for this kind of thing wasn't worth it. After all, Lan Binji was a prince, and could even become the emperor in the future. Qin Yetian didn't want to leave a bad impression on him. In the martial field, Ling Tian slowly came to his senses, his eyes once again becoming firm. He looked at Nie Tian and said seriously, "You saved my life, I'll remember it." Finished speaking, he didn't stay any longer, turning to leave. Nie Tian watched Ling Tian leave, his expression becoming heavy. Just now when he fought with Lan Binji, he already felt his opponent's power. Even Ling Tian, who had a lotus body, was defeated. Lan Binji's power was indeed terrifying. Boss, it's really a pity. Ling Tian almost defeated Lan Binji. Jean de Bao punched his palm, feeling very regretful. To Nie Tian, the biggest threat was Lan Binji. Nie Tian shook his head slightly, saying, "There's nothing to feel sorry about. If Ling Tian really defeated Lan Binji, that would be terrible." Jean de Bao was taken aback, wondering if Nie Tian had said something wrong. Ling Tian defeating Lan Binji, wasn't it good? Nie Tian didn't explain. He knew in his heart that if Ling Tian really defeated Lan Binji, his ending would definitely be worse than now. It was very likely that he would die. Nie Tian saw very clearly that the moment Lan Binji and Ling Tian clashed, Qin Yetian on the stage had already made his preparations. If Lan Binji was defeated, Qin Yetian would definitely make his move. If Qin Yetian made his move, would Ling Tian still be alive? This was the reason why Nie Tian's expression suddenly turned solemn. He wasn't afraid of Lan Binji but Qin Yetian. What would happen if Qin Yetian suddenly made his move when he and Lan Binji were fighting? Qin Yetian became another layer of worry for Nie Tian. However, Lan Binji had his protection, and so did Nie Tian. The 10th spiritual meridian, the blood feather heavenly spiritual rune, the 3 seals of the war god, and the explosive yuan pill from Liang Yunlong were Nie Tian's trump cards. However, what Nie Tian didn't know was that other than Qin Yetian, Lan Binji had another layer of protection, and that was the demoness killer of the Holocaust sect, Tang Yu. Just now, if Lan Binji was defeated, even if Qin Yetian didn't make his move, Tang Yu, who was hiding in the dark, would have made his move. Therefore, no matter what, Lan Binji wouldn't lose. With Fan Jinwu's reprimand, the crowd quickly quietened down. Aion Min's figure reappeared on the arena, and he said loudly, "Next match, Nie Tian vs Qin Feng." The second match of the top four was also the last match, and it was exceptionally eye-catching. If Nye Tian won, he could fight with Lan Binji and fight for the newcomer king. If Qin Feng won, there would be no suspense for the newcomer king. Qin Feng was Lan Binji's man, and he definitely wouldn't snatch things from his master. Nye Tian, come up and die. Qin Feng was the first to step onto the arena, and he was abnormally arrogant as he roared with a domineering aura. So arrogant, are you in a hurry to die? Jean de Bao looked at Qin Feng and mocked. Nye Tian also shot a glance at Qin Feng, and that gaze was like he was looking at an idiot. He leaped onto the arena and looked at Qin Feng coldly. Qin Feng had the strength of the Origin Spirit 9th level, and the dominating Sky Hammer's primordial spirit was very strong, and his attacks were ruthless enough. Looking at all aspects, Qin Feng's strength was slightly stronger than Liang Yunlong. But Nye Tian didn't think much of him at all. This match was just a warm-up for him before he faced Lan Binji. Chapter 89. You're the one courting death. Nye Tianling snickered as undisguised killing intent surfaced in his eyes. It was one thing for Lan Binji to be a little arrogant, but Qin Feng was just his dog. What was there to be arrogant about? At this moment, Nye Tian's killing intent was set. Divine War Imperial Fist. Facing Qin Feng's Sky Tyrant Hammer, Nye Tian didn't dodge. Instead, he took a step forward and the 10-meter-wide stage shook. Origin energy surged around his body as his entire body flickered with a dark golden glow. This was the first stage of the 9 Extremes War God Arts Golden Sky Battle Armor. It allowed Nye Tian's martial body to rise to the next level, making it comparable to a low-level heaven and earth spiritual body. Bang! Nye Tian punched out and clashed with Qin Feng's Sky Tyrant Hammer. The Sky Tyrant Hammer paused in the air before being forcefully knocked away. Qin Feng took a few steps back with a trace of fear on his face. He didn't expect Nye Tian to be so strong. Even though Nye Tian had hit 50,000 Jin in the test of strength, he had used the stone tablet's sensitivity to take advantage of it. Qin Feng's Sky Tyrant Hammer belonged to the Strength-type Elemental Soul. It was inconceivable for him to be at a disadvantage when facing Nye Tian head-on. Stinking brat, I didn't expect you to be so strong. Looks like I've underestimated you. Qin Feng grabbed the Sky Tyrant Hammer with his hand and his aura became even stronger. Nye Tianling looked at Qin Feng coldly and squeezed out a few words. My next move will take your life. Arrogant! Qin Feng roared. The Sky Tyrant Hammer suddenly emitted a scarlet glow. He took a step forward and leaped into the air. He gripped the Sky Tyrant Hammer with both hands and smashed it down. Sky Tyrant Suppression. The Sky Tyrant Hammer transformed into a giant hammer shadow that fell from the sky like a giant boulder. The powerful aura made Nye Tian frown slightly. But he didn't panic. His feet didn't move at all. The 10 elemental meridians in his body revolved crazily and the 9 Extremes War God Art circulated to the extreme. War God Ling Tian. As the hammer descended, Nye Tian suddenly raised his head, and the absolute heaven slash appeared in his hand. Immediately, a sharp sword light flew towards Qin Feng's neck. Bam! The huge shadow of the hammer fell and directly smashed onto Nye Tian's body. The entire stage seemed to sink a bit. However, Nye Tian's body was abnormally strong, and he actually withstood the bombardment of the Tyrant Sky Hammer. Pooh! At the same time, the sword light flashed past, and the sound of flesh being sliced rang out in the air. Qin Feng's neck had been pierced. While he was still in the air, the Tyrant Sky Hammer's origin spirit suddenly disappeared. His hand subconsciously covered his neck, but he was unable to stop the blood from gushing out. Qin Feng fell from the sky, and a fountain of blood spurted from his neck. After he landed, his body twitched a few times, and then there were no more movements. Dead. After a long time, when Qin Feng lost all signs of life, everyone came to their senses and gasped. Little brother Feng. A hysterical howl sounded out and a figure rushed out. It was Qin Yuhu. He had been watching the martial gathering competition, and was deeply shocked by Nie Tian's strength, especially when Nie Tian defeated Liang Yunlong in one move. Before Qin Feng went on stage, Qin Yuhu had warned him to be careful, and not to underestimate Nie Tian. Who would have thought that Qin Feng was too arrogant, and died at the hands of Nie Tian? Nie Tian jumped down from the stage, and looked coldly at the scene in front of him. Nie Tian, I'll kill you! Qin Yuhu suddenly turned around, and the Tiger Fang fierce sword appeared. Multiple sword shadows pierced towards Nie Tian. Nie Tian only moved slightly to the side, and casually blocked Qin Yuhu's attack. He said coldly, "If you dare attack again, I'll kill you." Feeling the killing intent in Nie Tian's eyes, Qin Yuhu could not help but tremble. His entire body actually gave off a trembling feeling, like a sheep being stared at by a lion. He immediately calmed down and subconsciously looked at Qin Feng's corpse. Walking forward, he carried it, and turned to say to Nie Tian, "Nie Tian, my Qin family definitely won't let you off." Finished talking, Qin Yuhu carried Qin Feng's corpse and left swiftly. Even after Qin Yuhu's figure completely disappeared, the crowd was still in shock, unable to react for a long time. Nie Tian's strength was too strong. Qin Feng with 9th level origin spirit strength was actually instantly killed by him in one move. This kind of strength was seriously terrifying. "Boss, you killed Qin Feng. The Qin family definitely won't take this lying down." Qin Yuhu's father is the commander of the Imperial Guards. Jean de Bao looked in the direction Qin Yuhu left in, and could not help saying worriedly. Nie Tian said coolly, "If I didn't kill Qin Feng, would the Qin family let me off?" Qin Yetian was Lan Binji's uncle. The Qin family was naturally tied together with Lan Binji. Even if there was no Qin Feng's matter, the Qin family would definitely spare no effort to deal with Nie Tian too. Jean de Bao looked at Nie Tian's resolute and cold eyes and was struck dumb in his heart. Previously, he was still worried that Nie Tian would be soft-hearted. Looking at it now, his worries were unnecessary. On the viewing platform, Qin Yetian's expression was grim until it was practically dripping blood. A pair of furious eyes glared at Nie Tian. Although Qin Feng was not his son, he was a member of his Qin family. Nie Tian killing a member of the Qin family in front of everyone clearly did not place the Qin family in his sight. After a while, Qin Yetian opened his mouth cold and said, "Dean Fan, just what kind of martial art does Nie Tian cultivate? Why is his body so powerful?" Nie Tian being able to defeat Qin Feng, the main reason was that his body was strong enough to actually be able to withstand the frontal bombardment of the tyrant Skyhammer. Otherwise, with Nie Tian's 4th level essence spirit strength, it was simply impossible to contend with a 9th level essence spirit martial artist. Fan Jinwu's expression was solemn, his expression becoming even darker as he shook his head and said, "I don't know either." Previously, Fan Jinwu deduced that Nie Tian's martial art was mystic rank or even earth rank, but now, he did not dare to be certain. He faintly had a guess in his heart. Perhaps Nie Tian's martial art was a heaven rank martial art. Otherwise, it was impossible to let him contend with a 9th level essence spirit martial artist with 4th level essence spirit strength. But a heaven rank martial art, even the pinnacle sects of the 3,000 small worlds might not possess it either. Nie Tian was merely a poor brat from a small place. How could he possibly possess a heaven rank martial art? Could it be that a horrifying faction was hidden behind him? If this faction really existed, it must be horrifying beyond imagination. I must have seen wrongly. Fan Jinwu shook his head repeatedly, forcing himself to calm down and not scare himself. If Nie Tian really had some horrifying faction behind him, why would he need to come to a small place like the Blue Cloud Empire? There was no need at all. Lan Binji looked at Nie Tian, his expression dark as he said, "Nie Tian, to be able to kill Qin Feng so easily, looks like this prince has really underestimated you." But it's fine. You'll know right away. Snatching something from this prince, there's only one outcome, that is death. Nye Tian defeated Qin Feng. Next was the moment of his showdown with Lan Binji. AI Anmin announced on the arena, Blue Tyrant Academy Freshman Martial Meet, Rookie King Showdown, Prince Binji Showdown, Nye Tian. When his words fell, the entire audience cheered. Everyone had been looking forward to this showdown for a long time. Be careful, boss. Jean Debeo could not help feeling worried and said to Nye Tian. Nye Yuro looked at Nye Tian and said very confidently, Big brother Fatty, don't worry. Big brother Nye Tian will definitely win. I also believe in Big brother Nye Tian. Qiu Ling nodded her head heavily. Nye Tian looked at the crowd and only smiled faintly. Then, he took a step forward, his figure darting tens of meters and landing directly on the arena. At the same time, Lan Binji's figure also appeared, facing Nye Tian. Chapter 90. Everyone stared with wide, unblinking eyes at the highly anticipated final battle. On the martial arena, Lan Binji smiled darkly and said, Nye Tian, it is good that you have made it all the way to the final battle. You have not disappointed me. Is that so? Nye Tian frowned slightly and said coldly, You will be disappointed very soon, and you will despair. Lan Binji started slightly, then laughed. In the entire kingdom of blue clouds, you are the first person who dares to speak to me like this. Nye Tian shook his head slightly and didn't waste any more words. Nye Tian had seen many arrogant and despotic young masters, but this was the first time he had seen someone as arrogant as Lan Binji. Lan Binji was arrogant and egotistical. He wanted to be in the limelight, and when he farted, he wanted the entire imperial city to smell it. Die! Lan Binji screamed, and the Blackwater mystical ice appeared again. A ball of black aura flew out, trying to wrap around Nye Tian. Earlier, when they were fighting below the stage, Lan Binji hadn't been able to use it. Now that they were on the martial arena, he had no more reservations. His first attack was the Blackwater mystical ice seal. Nye Tian took a few steps back, his face calm. Lan Binji was already a Wanxiang martial artist. The Blackwater mystical ice yuan spirit was solid and extremely domineering. If one was hit head-on, one would instantly turn into an ice sculpture. Dodge? Lan Binji chuckled and roared, Can you? He reached out with both hands, and another 2 balls of black aura pressed towards Nye Tian from the left and right. Nye Tian was very calm. He suddenly took a step forward, and his body shot out like an arrow, striking out with his palm towards Lan Binji. He didn't dodge, choosing to attack instead of defend. Lan Binji's Blackwater mystical ice could freely switch between the black mist and the black ice sword. If he dodged, he would definitely be hit. Rather than dodge, it was better to attack first. Lan Binji was slightly stunned. He didn't expect Nye Tian to attack first, but he reacted very quickly. He put his hands together, and an ice shield appeared in front of him. Bam! He struck out with his palm, and the ice shield instantly shattered. Lan Binji took a few steps back and steadied himself. Nye Tian, on the other hand, felt his palm stiffen and hurriedly circulated his origin energy to dispel the chill. Even so, his palm still felt a little numb, and it only dissipated after a long time. The Blackwater mysterious ice yuan spirit was too terrifying. It was just a moment of contact, but the bone-chilling cold was unbearable for Nye Tian. Only now did he realize that it wasn't easy for Ling Tian to fight with Lan Binji for such a long time. Stinking brat, I have to admit that you're really strong. You're a worthy opponent. Lan Binji had not expected that he would be defeated by Nye Tian. This was a humiliation. On the surface, the fact that Nye Tian had repelled Lan Binji with a single palm strike gave the impression that he had the upper hand. In fact, Nye Tian knew that he was already at a disadvantage. Although Lan Binji's strength had reached the first tier of all creations, in terms of absolute power, he was not stronger than Nye Tian. In fact, he was even slightly weaker. His advantage lay in the black water mysterious ice yuan spirit. After being repelled by Nyetian once, Lan Binji had obviously become more cautious. The black water mysterious ice transformed into a sharp ice sword, and he held it in his hand. Black ice 9 kills. Lan Binji stabbed out with his sword, and 9 ice flowers appeared in the air, which then turned into 9 icicles that shot towards Ling Tian. Nye Tian took a few steps back, and his body was already at the edge of the arena. If he took another half step back, he would fall off the arena. Lan Binji's black ice 9 kills was very domineering, and Ling Tian had been defeated by this move. Without much time to think, Nye Tian's feet moved continuously, and he punched out at the same time. The golden shadow of his fist hit the 9 icicles. At the same time, the 9 extreme beast yuan spirit appeared and enveloped his body, directly acting as Nye Tian's yuan spirit shield. The 9 icicles were shattered, but ice shards filled the sky. Nye Tian hurriedly used the 9 extremes war god art to block them, and a dark golden glow appeared around his body. Crack, crack, crack. The ice shards smashed onto Nye Tian's body, and actually formed countless ice flowers, causing the dark golden glow around his body to dim a lot. Nye Tian felt a bone-chilling coldness invading his body, as if all the meridians in his body were going to be frozen in the next moment. He frowned, and the 10th origin meridian was operating at full force, and waves of star energy gushed out. A shudder ran through Nye Tian's body as he shouted, "Break!" In the blink of an eye, countless ice shards shattered. Lan Binji was stunned for a moment, as if he was unwilling to believe the scene in front of him. Then, he laughed coldly and said, "Very good. You can actually break this prince's black ice 9 kills. You are indeed stronger than Ling Tian." The crowd was shocked, and they couldn't help but whisper to each other. "So powerful! Prince Binji is so terrifying, he almost froze such a huge origin spirit. Nye Tian is also very terrifying. The coldness on the icicles is too strong. I can feel it even from 100 meters away. I wonder who will win this battle." To be honest, before Nye Tian and Lan Binji officially started fighting, most people thought that Lan Binji would win. After all, Lan Binji was a Wanxiang martial artist, while Nye Tian was only an essence spirit martial artist. The two were almost an entire realm apart. But as the battle continued, everyone thought that it was hard to tell who would win. Hidden in the crowd, Lan Bingchen's heart was in his throat. He really hoped that Nye Tian would defeat Lan Binji, or even kill him. If Lan Binji died, there would be no one to fight with him for the throne. The 3 people on the high platform were also watching very intently, especially Qin Yetian, whose face was becoming more and more gloomy. Zhang Yifeng seemed to have sensed something and smiled faintly. "Commander Qin, do you think that Prince Binji will definitely win?" Qin Yetian's face was solemn as he said, "Nye Tian's strength is far beyond what I expected. To be able to face Prince Binji's mysterious ice 9 kills head-on, his strength is even stranger than Ling Tian, who has the spiritual body of heaven and earth." "Yes." Fan Jinwu nodded. Ling Tian had lost to the mysterious ice 9 kills, but Nye Tian had withstood it without being injured. From this, it could be seen that his strength was indeed stronger than Ling Tian's. Qin Yetian's expression changed slightly, and killing intent rose faintly from his body. Zhang Yifeng sensed this and frowned slightly. On the arena, the battle continued. Nye Tian and Lan Binji exchanged a few more blows, and Nye Tian was showing signs of his spirit energy running out. The most troublesome thing about fighting against Lan Binji was that he had to defend against his black water mystical ice at all times. If the black water mystical ice got close to him, just the coldness alone was unbearable. Luckily, Nye Tian had the power of the 10th Yuan Meridian, and the power of the stars seemed to have a suppressive effect on the black water mystical ice, which allowed Nye Tian to last until now. "What? That's it?" Lan Binji laughed mockingly and said, "This prince has just started. Although his mouth was mocking, Lan Binji was very surprised in his heart. He did not expect that Nye Tian's spirit energy was so abundant to be able to last until now. Moreover, when fighting against Nye Tian, almost every time he made a move, he had the illusion that he was being devoured. Nye Tian also had a feeling that the power of the stars had some sort of devouring attribute, which allowed him to plunder his opponent's spirit energy. This was also one of the reasons why Nye Tian could last until now. The power of the stars, the source of power. Could it be that the power of the stars can really devour spirit energy? Nye Tian thought of the voice in the Star River domain, and his heart suddenly trembled with excitement. If the power of the stars could devour spirit energy, then his future growth in strength would be even more terrifying. Nye Tian, your spirit energy is almost exhausted. This prince wants to see, how are you going to stop my black ice restriction? With a cold laugh, Lan Binji's hands suddenly formed a strange seal. Chapter 91. Lan Binji formed a hand seal, and the temperature on the stage plummeted. Faintly, it seemed as if an invisible hand had enveloped the entire arena. The bone-chilling cold caused Nye Tian to frown. He felt that the circulation of his yuan meridians had suddenly slowed down, and even moving his body had become abnormally difficult. Is this a restrictive spiritual array? Nye Tian exclaimed as he raised his head slightly. The corner of Lan Binji's eyes narrowed, and he immediately smiled. I didn't expect you to be so knowledgeable, to actually be able to see that my profound ice restriction is a spiritual array. You're giving me more and more surprises. I almost can't bear to kill you. He laughed maniacally and mockingly. Lan Binji was certain that Nye Tian would die. The profound ice restriction was indeed a type of spiritual formation. Although it was only a rank 2 spiritual formation, in Lan Binji's hands, it was enough to trap an all-creation martial artist. Generally speaking, only a spirit array master could set up a spirit array. Spiritual array master, this was a profession that was even more honorable than alchemist and blacksmith. In the entire Blue Cloud Empire, there were only a handful of spiritual array masters. In his previous life, Nye Tian was an all-rounder in cultivation. He had dabbled in alchemy, artifact forging, and spiritual arrays. Even though he wasn't an expert in the path of spiritual arrays, he still had the attainments of a rank 8 spiritual array master. In the entire heaven realm, there were not many who could surpass him in terms of spiritual arrays. The so-called spirit formation actually utilized an exquisite distribution of origin energy that coincided with the power of the heavens and the earth to exert formidable strength. The profound ice restriction was only a Tier 2 spiritual array. Nye Tian could see the array eye of the profound ice restriction with a casual glance. Everyone in the surroundings looked at the arena with fear on their faces. The profound ice restriction emitted an extremely cold intent. Layer after layer of cold chi caused the people near the stage to be unable to bear it, and they all retreated. I didn't expect this. I really didn't expect this. On the high platform, Qin Yetian was very excited. He laughed and said, So His Highness Bing Yi really comprehended the profound ice restriction spirit formation. It seems like this commander was overthinking. At this point, he intentionally or unintentionally looked at Zhang Yifeng in a provocative manner. Zhang Yifeng frowned but didn't say anything. He did not want to see Nye Tian lose, nor did he want to see Nye Tian die. But even at this moment, Zhang Yifeng still did not lose confidence in Nye Tian. He still believed that Nye Tian was the winner of this battle. Nye Tian, do you feel that your whole body is stiff and it's hard for you to even move? Haha. This prince's profound ice restrictions, not to mention a mere 4th-level origin spirit martial practitioner like you, even if it were a myriad phenomenon martial practitioner, if he were to be trapped within this prince's profound ice restrictions, there would be absolutely no chance of survival for him. Lan Binji laughed maniacally, but was in no hurry to make a move. He was enjoying the sight of Nye Tian being trapped very much. Jean de Bayo, who was watching from below the stage, was sweating profusely as he gulped down a mouthful of saliva. "Boss, please don't let anything happen." Jean de Bayo did not have any ideas, and could only worry in his heart. Qiu Shan and Qiu Ling looked at Nye Tian anxiously as well. Only Nye Yuro had a relaxed expression on her face, as if she wasn't worried about Nye Tian at all. In Nye Yuro's heart, Nye Tian was an invincible existence under the heavens. Lan Bingchen, who was hidden in the crowd, was also drenched in cold sweat. If Lan Bingji killed or defeated Nye Tian, his reputation would definitely soar. At that time, his position as crown prince might really change hands. Nye Tian was trapped within the profound ice restrictions. Every inch of muscle, every piece of bone, every blood vessel in his body seemed like they were about to be frozen solid. In order to maintain the agility of his body, he continuously circulated his essence meridians, expending his essence energy. Nye Tian, use your essence energy to resist the power of profound ice to your heart's content. This prince wants to see how much longer you can last. Lan Bingji's face was filled with mockery. Victory was within his grasp. As long as Nye Tian's essence energy was depleted, he would be frozen into an ice sculpture in the next second. At that time, as long as he touched him lightly, Nye Tian would shatter into ice shards. Thinking of the scene of Nye Tian shattering into ice shards, Lan Bingji could not help but laugh maniacally. Nye Tian's face was solemn. The corners of his lips curled up strangely as he thought in his heart, "Looks like it's time to use the blood feather heavenly fiend soul." Originally, Nye Tian did not intend to use the blood feather heavenly fiend star soul. After all, something like an astral soul was too heaven-defying. Using it under the watchful eyes of the crowd would definitely attract the attention of those with ulterior motive. But now, he was already forced to a dead end. If he still did not use the astral soul, his chances of survival would truly be minuscule. Although Nye Tian had already seen through the formation core of the profound ice restrictions, his current strength was too weak, and was completely insufficient to break the formation core. Amen? Seeing the smile on Nye Tian's lips, Lan Bingji was stunned as he thought to himself, could it be that he still has a trump card? Impossible. How can a mere 4th-level origin spirit trash break the profound ice restrictions? Lan Bingji calmed down, and did not want to scare himself. Right at this moment, there was movement in Nye Tian's soul space. The primal chaos original coffin suddenly lit up, and the blood feather heavenly fiend star soul turned into a majestic surge of origin energy that fused into his Dantian's yuan meridians. Instantly, the surging origin energy filled his Dantian, and the originally dried-up yuan meridians were instantly filled with origin energy. Boom! Nye Tian's body trembled, and his aura skyrocketed, becoming more and more terrifying, and more powerful. How is this possible? Lan Bingji was stunned, and subconsciously retreated a few steps. In an instant, he was intimidated by Nye Tian's powerful aura, and his heart instantly palpitated. On the high platform, Fan Jinwu, Zhang Yifeng, Qin Yetian and the rest also sensed the abnormality, and stood up one after another, their faces filled with shock. No one could have imagined that Nye Tian could still explode with such an aura at such a time, while trapped in the profound ice restrictions spirit array. It was simply inconceivable. Qin Yetian clenched his fists tightly, already prepared to deal with any abnormal situations. Qin Yetian, make your move. Let Nye Tian die in your hands. Only then can this old man be at ease. Fan Jinwu glanced at Qin Yetian, and the corners of his mouth could not help but curl up. On the arena, Lan Bingji quickly reacted to the sudden change in the situation. "I'll kill you!" he roared, and the profound ice sword in his hand pierced out, and a huge icicle flew towards Nye Tian. If he had known that Nye Tian had a backup plan, Lan Bingji would not have been so calm, and would have made his move a long time ago. Just as the icicle was about to pierce into Nyetian, the latter suddenly exploded. The wild aura was like a sudden clap of thunder, exploding in an instant, and an invisible force rushed towards the profound ice restriction's spirit array. The profound ice restriction was on the verge of collapsing, and the entire stage was trembling. Aionmin, who was standing at the side, was stunned. He had never thought that the battle between the two youths would reach such a level. Bang! Nyetian took a step, and his entire body emitted a terrifying aura. His figure leapt high into the air, and like a giant dragon, he soared into the sky. Hua! In the next instant, the profound ice restriction's spirit array could not withstand it anymore, and it suddenly shattered, and countless ice shards appeared in the air. Lan Binji's sword pierced through the air, and the profound ice restriction's spirit array was broken, causing his black water profound ice yuan spirit to suffer heavy injuries. His body trembled, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. After taking a few steps back, he fell on his butt. Impossible! Lan Binji was furious, and he crawled up, and with a roar, he spat out another mouthful of black blood. Never in his wildest dreams did he expect that Nyetian would actually be able to break through his profound ice restriction. Chapter 92. Nyetian swooped down from the sky and punched out with a ferocious aura. If Lan Binji were to be hit by this punch, he would definitely be smashed into minced meat. Lan Binji's eyes flashed with despair as he recalled Nyetian's words. "You'll be disappointed very soon, and you'll even be in despair." Lan Binji finally understood that Nyetian had not lied to him. "How dare you!" At the critical moment, a roar came from the stage as Qin Nyetian's figure shot up into the sky. A 10-meter-long thunder beast flashed past. Crack! Qin Nyetian struck out with his palm, sending a bolt of purple lightning straight at Nyetian. The purple lightning was fast, arriving in an instant. Boom! Before Nyetian's fist could land, the purple lightning struck Nyetian's body heavily. At the same time, Nyetian's fist turned into a finger, and an air-piercing force shot out from his fingertip towards Lan Binji's neck. Nyetian had expected Qin Nyetian to make a move, so the victorious imperial fist was just a feint. The finger of the Eastern Emperor was the real killer move that would take Lan Binji's life. Qin Nyetian's face fell as he sensed something amiss in the air. But it was too late. It was impossible for him to save Lan Binji now. Everything happened in a split second. Just as the finger of the Eastern Emperor was about to pierce through Lan Binji's neck, something happened. In that split second, a gust of wind blew across the stage, sweeping Lan Binji up. Whoosh! The finger of the Eastern Emperor brushed past Lan Binji's neck, leaving only a faint trace of blood. "There's someone else in the shadows." Nyetian instantly came to a realization. Qin Nyetian, Fan Jinwu, and Zhang Yifeng reacted as well, their expressions changing. Who on earth could have hidden themselves so well that even Nyetian hadn't detected them? Killer! Suddenly, two words appeared in Nyetian's mind. Nyetian's spiritual force was very strong, a total of 40 steps, comparable to a Tier 4 alchemist. There was only one kind of person who could hide his aura in front of him, and that was an assassin, and a very strong one at that. Nyetian's guess was right. The person who attacked was a killer. It was none other than Holocaust sex genius young lady killer, Tang Yuyu. Tang Yuyu had been hiding in the dark for a long time, waiting for this crucial moment. Since Qin Nyetian wanted to kill Nyetian, then she would just have to step in and save Lan Binji. Bang! Almost at the same time that Lan Binji was rescued, Nyetian was struck by the purple lightning. The dark golden light that enveloped his body was instantly shattered, and his whole body was knocked dozens of meters into the air. He was like a leaf in the wind that could collapse at any time. Qin Nyetian, the commander of the Imperial Guard and one of the few giant spirit realm experts in Blue Cloud City, had already condensed a giant spirit true body. The rushing thunder beast shadow that flashed behind him just now was his giant spirit true body, which was dozens of meters large. He used his giant spirit true body right from the start, obviously to kill Nie Tian. Even a Tier 9 manifestation martial artist would not be able to withstand the full-force attack of a giant spirit realm expert. Qin Yetian predicted that Nie Tian would definitely die, and the corner of his mouth curled up in satisfaction. Although it was a loss of poise for him to make a move now, and it would also damage the reputation of the imperial family, so what? The most important thing was to let Lan Binji live, and then let him obtain the title of newcomer king. Everyone in the arena fixed their gazes on Nie Tian, who was floating in midair, their eyes filled with complicated emotions. No one could have imagined that Nie Tian was actually so strong. If Qin Yetian did not make a move, Lan Binji would already be a corpse by now. But what was even more unexpected was that Qin Yetian actually killed Nie Tian in front of everyone. Even if he was the commander of the Imperial Guard, he could not be so shameless. Jean de Bao raised his head to look at Nie Tian, his fists clenched so tightly that they almost bled. Qiushan and Qiuling both looked horrified. Even Nie Yuro, who had always been full of confidence in Nie Tian, was scared to tears. Even Nie Tian would not be able to withstand the full-force attack of a giant spirit realm expert. Everyone was certain that Nie Tian would die without a doubt. Nie Tian's body suddenly descended. Just as he was a few meters above the ground, a strange scene appeared. Whoosh! Whoosh! His body in midair suddenly shook, and he soared into the air. A pair of black wings that were 5 to 6 meters long suddenly sprouted from his back. The black wings shook violently in the air, kicking up a cloud of dust on the ground. Nie Tian's body shot up into the air, and his figure froze in midair like a demon god, tyrannical and tyrannical. A pair of angry eyes glared at Qin Yetian. At this moment, the pair of black wings on his back was none other than his astral soul, the Blood Wings' heavenly fiend astral soul. At the instant when he was struck by Qin Yetian, the Golden Sky battle armor formed from the 9 Extremes War God art had blocked the majority of the attack. But even so, Nie Tian was still sent flying by the immense force. Luckily, he maintained his consciousness during the descent, and completely activated his Blood Wings' heavenly fiend astral soul. This sudden scene caused everyone to be dumbfounded. Everyone inclined their heads to stare at Nie Tian, dumbfounded expressions on their faces. Lan Binji crawled up from the arena, his eyes wide open. Pointing at Nie Tian, he stammered incoherently, Are you a human or a ghost? What do you think?" Since the Blood Wings' heavenly fiend astral soul had already been exposed, Nie Tian no longer had any scruples. With a flap of his wings, a gust of wind whistled downwards. Qin Yetian immediately reacted. His silhouette flickered, and with a single hand, he pushed Lan Binji out of the arena. Boom! The gust of wind actually split the arena into 2 halves. What power! Nie Tian frowned. He didn't expect the might of the Blood Wings' heavenly fiend astral soul to be so monstrous. No wonder Nie Tian had spent a total of 10 days to inscribe the Blood Wings' heavenly fiend astral soul. Indeed, a minute of time, a minute of power. Qin Yetian stared at Nie Tian with a look of astonishment on his face. The power displayed by Nie Tian had far surpassed his imagination. He couldn't understand where that pair of black wings that exuded a boundless baleful aura had come from. Involuntarily, Qin Yetian turned to look at Fan Jinwu and Zhang Yifeng. The latter too had dumbfounded looks on their faces, and the shock they felt was even more obvious than his. "Uncle, quickly kill him for me." Lan Binji crawled up from the ground as he screamed in a frenzy. Only now did Lan Binji realize that with his current strength, it was impossible for him to contend against Nie Tian. If he wanted to kill Nie Tian, he definitely needed Qin Yetian to act. Or perhaps Tang Yuyu, who was hiding in the dark, would act. However, at this moment, Nie Tian had already sensed Tang Yuyu's presence, and Nie Tian had already guessed Tang Yuyu's identity as an assassin. No matter what motive Tang Yuyu had for appearing at Tyrant Cloud Academy's freshman martial meet, It was impossible for her to appear openly. After all, the Bloodbat sect was a dirty assassin organization. At this moment, Tang Yuyu didn't leave. She was hidden in the crowd, observing everything that was happening in the arena. She was already prepared to give Nie Tian a fatal blow at the most crucial moment. Nie Tian, right? Tang Yuyu's heart trembled slightly as she muttered this name. She sneered in her heart. If you want to blame someone, blame yourself for being too strong. If I let you live, you will definitely become a great calamity. The strength displayed by Nie Tian was too strange, and even Tang Yuyu felt fear in her heart. Chapter 93. Qin Yetian, are you deaf? I ordered you to kill him. Seeing that Qin Yetian wasn't going to make a move, Lan Binji bellowed furiously once more. He could give up on the title of Rookie King, but Nie Tian had to die. Qin Yetian reacted. He hesitated for a moment, but then he calmed down and looked at the black wings on Nie Tian's back. His heart trembled, and he immediately decided to kill him. Since he had already made his move, he couldn't hesitate any longer. He had to cut the Gordian knot. You really want to kill me? From 100 meters away, Nie Tian could feel the sharp killing intent from Qin Yetian's body. His face turned cold as he spoke angrily. A dignified commander of the Imperial Guards had actually killed a youth in front of everyone. It seemed like the face of the royal family was just a pile of dog shit. Qin Yetian was slightly startled. A poisonous light shot out from his eyes. Cold, he said. Nie Tian, you have no respect for the princes and despise the royal family. Today, I will execute you on the spot. Humph. Nie Tian's face was solemn as he shook his head and sneered. What a disrespectful prince, looking down on the royal family. If you wish to incriminate someone, you can always find a pretext. Everyone in the arena frowned when they heard this. Who would have thought that the commander of the Imperial Guards of the Blue Cloud Empire, the dignified patriarch of the Qin family, was actually a shameless person? Even Fan Jinwu and Zhang Yifeng looked at each other in shock. They were speechless at Qin Yetian's excuse. Qin Yetian, you bullshit! Jean de Bao bellowed from below, pointing at Qin Yetian and cursing. Qin Yetian glanced at him and recognized his identity, but ignored him. Jean de Bao's identity was special. He was the son of the Blue Cloud Chamber of Commerce's president, Jean Mingxin. If Jean de Bao was killed, Jean Mingxin might be angered. Therefore, Qin Yetian directly ignored Jean de Bao. Qiu Shan and the others' hearts were in their throats. They didn't know what to do. At this time, even if Qiu Shan made a move, not only would he not be able to save Nie Tian, but he would also become a burden to Nie Tian. Qin Yetian, what kind of commander are you? You have no bottom line when it comes to farting. Shameless. You've lost all the face of the royal family. If you dare to kill my boss, I, Jean de Bao, will definitely not let you off. Qin Yetian ignored Jean de Bao, and Jean de Bao scolded Jean de Bao even more happily. Qin Yetian frowned slightly. Although Jean de Bao's cursing didn't hurt him, it would affect his mentality. He casually waved his hand and a terrifying pressure rushed towards Jean de Bao. In the next moment, Jean de Bao's body went limp, and he collapsed to the ground. De Bao! Nie Tian roared. When he sensed that Jean de Bao's aura was still there and that he had only fainted, he heaved a sigh of relief. Qiushan hurriedly helped Jean de Bao up. Everyone stared at the sky without blinking. No one had thought that things would develop to this point. Nie Tian let out a long breath. Now that things had come to this, he had no way out. They could only fight. That's right. A battle with a giant spirit realm martial practitioner. Although he was weak now, he still had the blood feather heavenly baneful beast. Furthermore, he still had a tier 3 yuan burst pill in his hands. These were all his trump cards. No longer thinking about other things, Nie Tian directly swallowed the yuan burst pill. When the yuan burst pill entered his body, the aura in Nie Tian's body skyrocketed. His long hair fluttered in the air, and his gaze became increasingly strange. His pair of black eyes were vicious and ruthless, like a demon that walked out from hell. Qin Yetian, I'll fight with you. Let's see what capabilities you have to kill me. With a loud roar, Nye Tian felt that his essence meridians and essence spirit were both in the midst of a terrifying expansion. An intense tearing pain spread throughout his entire body. He didn't expect that the power of a Tier 3 Yuan burst pill would actually be so ferocious. Tier 3 Yuan burst pill, if an ordinary essence spirit martial artist were to consume it, they would definitely die tragically on the spot. Just that kind of power was not what an essence spirit martial artist could withstand. Luckily, Nye Tian had the 10th essence meridian and cultivated the 9 extreme true body art. His body was far stronger than ordinary essence spirit martial artists. Amen? 9th level essence spirit realm. Qin Yetian's figure moved, and he immediately understood. Nye Tian consumed the Yuan burst pill. Qin Yetian, what are you still waiting for? Quickly kill him. Lan Binji already could not wait any longer, letting out a roar from his throat. He anxiously wanted to see the moment Nye Tian perished and his soul perished. Qin Yetian sucked in a long breath and no longer waited. He gave a long howl. Stinking brat, this commander wants to see just what kind of strength you have to actually be so arrogant. When his voice landed, the rushing thunder beast primordial spirit appeared behind Qin Yetian. It was over 30 meters in size, its entire body emitting a purple glow, and lightning surging nonstop. This was Qin Yetian's primordial spirit, the rushing thunder beast. Qin Yetian was already a giant spirit realm expert. The rushing thunder beast's primordial spirit condensed into a giant spirit true body. That was why it was so terrifying. Giant spirit true body, this was precisely the hallmark of a giant spirit realm expert. Condensing the giant spirit true body, the power of the primordial spirit would be 100 times more tyrannical. With just a raise of a hand, it was sufficient to destroy mountains, rivers, and waterfalls. Giant spirit martial artists are indeed powerful. Looking at the rushing thunder beast's giant spirit true body, Nye Tian's heart trembled. He still underestimated the power of a giant spirit martial artist too much. The instant Qin Yetian's giant spirit true body appeared, everyone present felt a tyrannical pressure, making people involuntarily have an impulse to kneel down and worship. Even Fan Jinwu and Zhang Yifeng also gave sidelong glances. The power of the royalty was indeed horrifying. Zhang Yifeng wanted to help at this time, but he did not know how to help. Prepare to die. Right at this time, Qin Yetian roared angrily. Under this move, he spared no effort, determined to kill Nye Tian in one blow. Rushing Thunder Hand. The rushing thunder beast's giant spirit true body spewed out a surge of purple lightning, turning into a large purple hand in midair, erupting with crackling thunder and lightning, rumbling towards Nye Tian. This move was fast, accurate, and ruthless. There was simply no way to avoid. Nye Tian's expression was calm. Hardening his heart, the blood feather heavenly wings on his back suddenly closed, forming a huge black sword in front of his chest. At this moment, he did not retreat but advanced instead. Roar! The golden pole yellow heaven battle armor appeared once more, enveloping his entire body. Dark golden light flickered, and his essence energy was incomparably abundant, even closer to materialization. Is he crazy? Seeing that not only did Nye Tian not evade, but he even took the initiative to charge towards Qin Yetian, Fan Jinwu's expression changed greatly, revealing a look of horror. The people below were all scared silly. The power of a giant spirit expert was too terrifying, exceeding their understanding. Only one person did not have doubts, but was shocked. The corners of Tang Yuyu's mouth curled up, and he thought to himself, what terrifying battle talent. He can actually see that the closer the rushing thunder hand is, the weaker its power is. She was astonished at Nye Tian's battle talent. If she were to battle with Qin Yetian, she would also choose to retreat in order to advance. Tang Yuyu could see that the rushing thunder hand looked terrifying, but it had a fatal flaw. The power and might were gathered continuously after the move was released. Hence, the closer one got to the rushing thunder hand, the smaller the damage received. However, Tang Yuyu had the strength of a 9th-level manifestation, and he was the number 1 genius assassin of the Blood Fiend sect. It was not strange that he could see through this point. How could Nie Tian, a mere 4th-level origin spirit martial artist, see through this point? There was only one reason that could explain it. Nie Tian was a peerless martial genius. Even if you can see through the rushing thunder hand's flaw, I don't believe that you can withstand this blow. Even though Nie Tian saw through this point, Tang Yuyu still did not believe that he could survive. Swoosh! Nie Tian's figure flew through the air, like an arrow leaving the bow, piercing towards Qin Yetian. Everyone held their breaths at the shocking scene. Many people did not dare to imagine what would happen next. In the next instant, Nie Tian's figure collided head-on with the large purple lightning hand. The power of lightning attacked his entire body, making Nie Tian involuntarily let out a muffled groan. Chapter 94. Roar! As Qin Yetian exerted strength in his hand, the rushing thunder beast let out a roar towards the sky. Its huge body immediately went berserk, and the power of lightning became more and more obvious. Its whole body released a wild aura, as if it was an infuriated ancient beast. Nie Tian, die obediently! Qin Yetian roared in his heart and sneered. Is that so? At this time, Nie Tian let out a strange laugh. In the next moment, a strange scene happened. The power of lightning on the rushing thunder palm was actually absorbed by Nie Tian, and the purple lightning palm strangely disappeared. Power of the stars, the source of power. Destroy the sky, swallow the heaven and earth. Power of the stars awaken, heaven-devouring soul activate. Within the soul space, within the boundary of the galaxy, a thunderous voice sounded, and Nie Tian was stunned for a moment. His previous guess was right, the power of the stars could indeed swallow essence power. Heaven-devouring soul! Nie Tian was ecstatic. Power of the stars, destroy the sky, swallow the heaven and earth. It could even swallow the heaven and earth, let alone the power of lightning. After absorbing the lightning power, Nie Tian instantly became even wilder. The golden sky battle armor once again appeared around him. The dark golden aura seemed to have been infused with some kind of lightning power, causing it to release purple lightning bolts, which made it look very creepy. The sudden scene made Qin Yetian stunned, and he found it hard to accept. At this time, even he started to suspect that Nie Tian was not a human, but a ghost. After swallowing Qin Yetian's power of lightning, Nie Tian's figure became even faster, and the huge black sword formed by the blood-feather heavenly fiend became even sharper, flickering with purple lightning, rushing towards Qin Yetian. Qin Yetian was after all a Jin expert, and he immediately calmed down. The rushing thunder beast's Jin true body let out a sharp roar, and immediately, a purple electric net appeared, enveloping his body. Bang! The huge black sword fell, but it was as if it slashed on a thick and hard iron plate. Nie Tian's figure in the air became sluggish, unable to move even half a step forward. Stinking brat, trying to borrow my power to defeat me, don't even think about it. Qin Yetian sneered, and with a shake of his hand, he struck out with his palm. Pung! With a loud sound, the two of them separated. Nie Tian's figure flew backward. His huge black wings shook in the air, and he immediately stabilized his body. The audience fell into a deathly silence. How was this possible? Am I seeing things? Am I really not dreaming? A moment later, everyone had the same question in their minds. Nie Tian exchanged a blow with Qin Yetian. Not only did he not die, he did not lose either. Instead, he forced Qin Yetian to defend passively. This scene was even more surreal than a dream. After a while, Fan Jinwu exclaimed in surprise, "This kid's strength is so formidable." He knew very well in his heart that even he would find it difficult to escape unscathed from Qin Yetian's attack just now. Zhang Yifeng, on the other hand, was completely dumbfounded. His entire body stiffened. Lan Binji was scared silly. He stared blankly and didn't move for a long time. Even Lan Bingchen was stunned. The power of the stars, the soul that devours the heavens, it's really abnormal. Nie Tian was also slightly shocked in his heart. He felt that his own strength was unbelievable. At this moment, he had only awakened the power of 16 stars, but he could actually absorb the full power of the giant spirit martial sovereign. If he awakened the power of 900 billion stars, wouldn't he be strong to the point of being invincible? However, Nie Tian also knew that the reason why he was able to display such heaven-defying strength was not only because of his astral energy, but also because of the blood-feather Skyfiend astral soul, the golden sky battle armor, and the third-ranked Yuan explosion pill. Without the support of these three powers, even if Nie Tian had 100 lives, he wouldn't be able to withstand a single blow from Qin Yetian. But now, Nie Tian was facing a fatal predicament. The blood-feather heavenly fiend was slowly weakening. The blood-feather heavenly fiend astral soul could only be maintained for a short period of time. After clashing head-on with Qin Yetian, the power of his astral soul rapidly weakened and was about to vanish. Once the blood-feather heavenly fiend disappeared, Nie Tian would completely lose the ability to resist. Stinking brat, this general admits that your strength is very strong. But you still have to die. Furthermore, you must die. Qin Yetian practically went crazy. His killing intent became even thicker, practically gnashing his teeth as he roared. To think that he, a dignified giant spirit martial sovereign, actually could not even kill an essence spirit martial artist with a single move. This was simply a humiliation. The next move, Nie Tian must die. Rushing thunder titanic beast, heaven exterminating strike. Without waiting for a moment, Qin Yetian gave a loud roar. Chopping down with both palms, a horrifying bolt of purple lightning, carrying the power to destroy heaven and earth, chopped down from the sky. Crap! Nie Tian sucked in a breath of cold air, his expression changing drastically. He could sense that the heaven-exterminating strike was more than several times stronger than the rushing thunderhands earlier. Being struck by the heaven-exterminating strike, even steel tendons and iron bones would turn into dust. What was even more horrifying was that the heaven-exterminating strike was even more tyrannical, without the slightest bit of flaw. If forcefully resisted, it would absolutely result in one's body being torn to shreds. At this extremely critical moment, there was no time to think too much. Nie Tian revolved all the essence energy in his body, flooding it onto the gold pole heaven battle armor. At the same time, the blood-feather heavenly wings folded up, wrapping around his entire body, forming an enormous black sphere, seamlessly protecting Nie Tian. Bang! With a loud bang, the gold pole heaven battle armor actually did not have the slightest bit of strength to retaliate under the heaven-exterminating strike, suddenly collapsing into pieces. In the next instant, the purple lightning power once again erupted with horrifying power, striking onto the blood-feather heavenly fiend. Crack, crack, crack! The blood-feather heavenly fiend instantly suffered the attack, cracking inch by inch, instantly turning into fragments and dissipating in the air. Nie Tian's body appeared, all the clothes on his body directly ripped apart. The tyrannical aura caused his skin to split open one bloody wound after another. Instantly, in midair, traces of blood flew about, essence energy surging. Nie Tian was like a heavy boulder, smashing towards the ground. Qin Yetian's strength was too strong. A giant spirit martial artist was absolutely not someone a fourth-level origin spirit martial artist could contend against. Nie Tian was in midair, his body dripping with fresh blood. His injuries were extremely severe, but his consciousness was still very clear. At the same time, Tang Yuyu sensed that Nie Tian's aura was still present. The corners of her mouth suddenly curled up, her hand forming a thumb and middle finger, lightly flicking out. Purring! A field of black feather blades pierced through the air, attacking straight towards Nyetian. Nyetian, one crow feather blade is enough to take your life. Laughing lightly, Tang Yuyu did not linger for even a moment, confidently turning around and leaving elegantly. She was certain that Nyetian would definitely die, so there was no need for her to stay. Also, her whereabouts had already been exposed, so it was better to leave as soon as possible. Nyetian was in midair when he suddenly felt a sharp gust of wind assaulting him from tens of meters away, his heart instantly shuddering. The 10th origin meridian in his body felt it at this moment, and with a violent jolt, it actually caused Nyetian's body to freeze in midair for a moment. Swoosh! In just a mere instant, the crow feather blade brushed past Nyetian's shoulder, narrowly avoiding the vital point of his heart. Following that, Nyetian landed heavily, directly smashing into the deep pit. Everyone present had their gazes fixed on the deep pit, not moving a muscle. Dead. Finally dead. Suddenly, Lan Binji's shrill and piercing voice rang out, wild with joy, almost going insane. Being struck head-on by Qin Yetian, his battle armor shattered, his blood feather heavenly fiend disintegrated. Everyone was certain that Nyetian was dead for sure. Finally dead. Qin Yetian exhaled a long breath of turbid air high up in the air. If Nyetian still did not die, his face as the commander of the Imperial Guards would be thrown all the way to his grandma's house. Fan Jinwu let out a long sigh, finally heaving a sigh of relief in his heart. Zhang Yifeng's expression was one of shock, not daring to believe the scene before his eyes. His mental power enveloped over, and his face was instantly aghast as he cried out in terror, "No! Teacher is still alive!" Chapter 95. Still alive. Everyone sucked in a breath of air, wishing that they could dig out their eyeballs to see the scene before them. Receiving a fatal blow from a mighty spirit martial artist, he actually did not die. Nyetian challenged the limits of everyone's mental endurance over and over again today. Big Brother Nyetian. Boss. Big Brother Nyetian. Mr. Nye. Nyeyuro, Jean Debeo, Chiu Ling Chiu Shan, and the rest looked at Nyetian together, agitated until they were about to cry. Nyetian stabilized his body and spat out a mouthful of dirty blood. His complexion actually improved considerably. In order to resist Qin Yetian's heaven-exterminating strike, Nyetian paid a heavy price. The golden pole yellow heaven battle armor and blood feather heavenly fiend were both shattered. The current Nyetian was very weak, but he was still alive. Just who was it that made a move behind my back? Nyetian became cold, his gaze roaming around the crowd. But the person who made a move, Tang Yuyu, had long disappeared. Tang Yuyu was too confident, overly confident. She was certain that Nyetian would definitely die, so she left in advance. This is impossible. After a moment, Qin Yetian's roar sounded in the air. He could not believe the scene before him. His killing move, Heaven Exterminating Strike, actually failed to kill an essence spirit martial artist. This was simply the biggest joke in the world. Fan Jinwu was also dumbfounded, completely unaware of what had happened. Still alive, teacher is still alive. Only Zhang Yifeng alone was wild with joy, close to going crazy. Bang! Qin Yetian fell from the air, landing heavily on the ground, causing the ground to tremble. He walked towards Nyetian step by step, carrying monstrous rage. His pair of eyes could spew fire. At this time, as long as he moved slightly, he could easily crush Nyetian to death. Nyetian's face was calm, without the slightest bit of panic. Up until this moment, he was still fearless. At some point, Nyetian's gaze suddenly landed on Lan Bingchen. Lan Bingchen. As long as Lan Bingchen was willing to stand out at this time and stop Qin Yetian, then Nyetian would be saved. But Lan Bingchen cowered and did not stand out. He was scared. Nie Tian's strength was too terrifying. If he survived, he might become a threat to the entire royal family. Qin Yetian's footsteps became louder and louder. He was like a god of death as he closed in on Nie Tian. Do I still have to use the 3 seals of the divine god of battle? Nie Tian did not panic. He closed his eyes and murmured in his heart. The 3 seals of the divine battle god was Nie Tian's final trump card. However, with his current condition, even if he were to use the 3 seals of the divine god of battle, he would not be able to suppress Qin Yetian. Qi Feng? At this moment, Nie Tian suddenly felt a familiar aura appear. Nie Tian suddenly opened his eyes. The distance between him and Qin Yetian was already less than 5 meters. Right at this moment, a white-clothed figure suddenly descended, blocking between Nie Tian and Qin Yetian. Dressed in spotless white robes, he was handsome and aloof. It was Qi Feng. Principal Qi. Qi Feng's sudden appearance caused the onlookers to exclaim. Everyone knew that Fan Jinwu was in charge of the freshman martial gathering this time. Why would Qi Feng suddenly appear? Principal Qi. Seeing the face in front of him, Qin Yetian's body froze. Step back, Qi Feng said indifferently. His voice was not loud, but it contained an undefiable overbearingness. In the entire Blue Cloud Empire, there were only a handful of people who dared to speak to Qin Yetian in such an overbearing manner. Qi Feng's sudden appearance immediately caused a commotion. Fan Jinwu did not expect Qi Feng to appear at this moment. His heart sank, and he immediately felt that something was amiss. Qi Feng had once saved Nie Tian from Fan Jinji. His appearance this time was obviously to save Nie Tian. Fan Jinwu's expression did not look good. He wanted to say something, but he swallowed his words. Actually, logically speaking, Fan Jinwu should be the one to stop Qin Yetian. After all, Qin Yetian's current actions were trampling on the rules of Tyrant Cloud Academy, as well as the dignity of Tyrant Cloud Academy. Principal Qi Yu. Qin Yetian looked at Qi Feng and was stunned. If facing others, Qin Yetian would not be afraid at all. But facing Qi Feng, he was very fearful. Qi Feng was one of the few powerhouses in the Blue Cloud Empire, and he was also the vice principal of Tyrant Cloud Academy. Even if the Blue Cloud Emperor saw him, he also had to be respectful. I'll say it again, step back. Qi Feng did not even look at Qin Yetian. His voice was cold, and a wave of origin energy surged out. His long robe fluttered, and his aura was imposing. Qin Yetian's expression changed rapidly. In the end, he barely squeezed out a smile and took several steps back. Facing Qi Feng, even he had no choice but to step back. Putting aside that Qin Yetian was not Qi Feng's opponent, even if he could beat Qi Feng, he absolutely would not dare to make a move. Qi Feng was a member of Tyrant Cloud Academy, and he represented Tyrant Cloud Academy. If Qin Yetian made a move against Qi Feng at this moment, it was practically announcing that the royalty and Tyrant Cloud Academy had broken off. Qin Yetian could not bear this responsibility. Qin Yetian, you are not allowed to step back. Kill Nie Tian for this prince. Suddenly, Lan Binji's figure jumped out, one finger pointing at Nie Tian, his expression vicious. Qin Yetian looked at Lan Binji, wanting to call ancestor in his heart. Lan Binji was young after all and did not know Qi Feng's prowess, and also did not know Tyrant Cloud Academy's prowess. Qi Feng shot a glance at Lan Binji and said coolly, "With me around, who dares to kill him?" His voice was not loud, calm and indifferent, but it gave people a domineering feeling that they could not look straight at it. Everyone's hearts trembled inexplicably, their entire bodies shuddering. Qi Feng is indeed domineering enough. Nie Tian laughed bitterly in his heart. Qi Feng was a typical person who was cold on the outside but warm on the inside. He was callous on the surface, but he was warm and kind on the inside. However, Lan Binji still could not figure out the situation. He took a step forward and hooted, "Qi Feng, do you really want to oppose the royalty?" Chi Feng was slightly taken aback, his voice suddenly becoming icy cold. Is Chi Feng also someone you can call? Lan Binji felt a faint pressure, making him unable to speak another word. Qin Yetian hurriedly pulled Lan Binji back, bowed and said, Principal Qi, His Highness Binji is young and did not mean to offend you. Please forgive him, Principal Qi. Prince Binji, I will not argue with you on account of your young age. If you speak rudely again next time, even if Lan Yunhai personally protects you, I will definitely take your life. Chi Feng glanced at Lan Binji again with an indifferent expression. Lan Yunhai was the name of the Blue Cloud Emperor. In the Blue Cloud Empire, there were really not many people who dared to directly call the Blue Cloud Emperor by his name in front of everyone. Chi Feng was not a narrow-minded person, but Lan Binji's arrogance and despotism was truly intolerable. Hence, Chi Feng could be tolerant of others, but he had to be harsh towards Lan Binji. Lan Binji was still in a state of shock and did not dare to speak again. Chi Feng no longer cared about Lan Binji and the others. He turned to look at Nye Tian and said, Mr. Nye, are you all right? His tone was calm, but it was somewhat respectful. I won't die for the time being. Nye Tian gently patted his tattered clothes and smiled bitterly. Ever since Chi Feng appeared, although he only said a few words, every sentence and every word revealed a dignified and domineering aura, making it impossible for people to disobey. This was the deterrent power of an expert.